Welcome to week 12 and welcome to Stats versus Film, where we take everything that happened on the NFL field, the tape watching that we did in our chambers, in our basements, and then compare that with the stats, the spreadsheets, the underlying metrics, and the hopes of helping you win your upcoming fantasy football matchup. Hayden, we're deep into the season, still no fantastic one-of-a-kind teams out there. But to me, this season is so much fun, other than the abysmal watches that we still have on a weekly basis. Because there is so much parity out there, and I can't pinpoint which team or the top three or the top five that really get my juices flowing in terms of this team is certified Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I see it the same exact way. I think there's about like 8 teams that can realistically do it, and about 6 of them would have like very big flaws if they do pull it off. But that's the NFL. It's what it's all about.
I feel like this year, the team that wins it is going to have a big flaw out there that maybe for that 3-4 game stretch is not a flaw like it was during the regular season. As you know, our goal is to hit 170,000 subscribers by the end of the season. If you can do that for us and be a part of the group that watches this channel and also hits that subscribe button free, that would be massive, massive for us. On that note, Hayden, I think the perfect place to start this week is with Sunday Night Football and to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a few areas that we can attack this team. The first one is maybe the direction that a lot of opponents will now be attacking this team, and it's at the right tackle spot. Lane Johnson is out. This is a injury that he has been dealing with or has dealt with multiple over the last couple of years. There's some significant on-off splits with Lane Johnson in the lineup and without the lineup. What does this do overall to a team?
Yeah, so the on-off splits over the last 4 years, which is like the A.J. Brown era, they've been averaging 0.11 EPA per play, 47% success rate. When they don't have Lane Johnson, it's at negative 0.09 with a 42% success rate. And the sample size is pretty big there, and you can feel it just like the offense, especially how they play right now, where a lot of their pass games like deeper concepts, and you need to be able to hold up under pressure. And that's just gonna be a lot harder to do with a 6 offensive linemen out there rather than a all-pro Lane Johnson. So there's gonna have some ripple effects. They really still just can't run the ball all that effectively. They're kind of living and dying by the explosive play, and now they're like absolutely raging defense, which is I think is going to actually carry them pretty far throughout the playoffs. But we're going to have big conversations about the A.J. Brown film, the Jalen Hurts film. And the big caveat is like we have to lower expectations across the board because Lane Johnson, aside from the quarterback position, he's probably their most important player to me.
QBR also backs it up from the great Bill Barnwell. It's with the last 3 quarterbacks that they've had, like with Carson Wentz, that dropped from a quarterback rating of 63.8 down to 49.6. With Jalen Hurts, the QBR has gone from 66.1 with Lane Johnson to without 42.1. And then Nick Foles, that was at 65.7 down to 58.5. Yeah, the running game hasn't been going, and I don't know how it gets going without, the right tackle, with him dealing with a Liz Frank injury. When you went back and watched this Jalen Hurts tape, what did you see? Because I think you can look at it from a bunch of different angles, and I'll dive into it after, that arguably these two underlying metrics-wise performances on offense over the last 2 weeks have been 2 of the worst in the Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni era. And I want to see from your eyes if you've seen anything different, if and why that's the case.
Well, over the last month, they're still second lowest neutral pass rate. They're still trying to run the ball. It just has not been effective at all. It's like more league average across the board, and I don't think that's going to get fixed. Cam Jurgens has been in and out of the lineup as well. For Jalen Hurts, it's still like the same weaknesses that he's always going to have. He's just not going to throw the ball over the middle. He's going to live and die by the deep ball. When he kind of breaks contain, he's scrambling maybe a little bit more recently than he did at other times. But a lot of the times those are like throwaways. What I found most interesting was with the Lions, they play a lot of man coverage, and teams typically don't play man coverage against the Eagles. They just said, screw it. We're going to have a bunch of island reps with our corners against Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown did have a lot of targets on them. He came down with about half of them, but did not look like the crazy all-pro caliber wide receiver that made the Eagles so deadly the previous 2-3 seasons when they were in the Super Bowl. So unless A.J. Brown gets all the way back, this offense is going to be worse than where it was. And they didn't get Devontae Smith, who I thought has been better than A.J. Brown out there. But this was the perfect opportunity for A.J. Brown to have a crazy 100-plus yard game, multiple touchdowns. And he's just not the same player to me right now. So wanted to drill on that because I think that's one of the big spots that's the difference between 2-3 years ago versus this version of the team.
So after week 10, Sheil Kapadia, who has done a great job, all thing Eagles for a very, very long time, said based on offensive success rate, that was the Eagles' worst regular season performance of the Sirianni Hurts era, a 6th percentile offensive performance. The only game that was worse was the playoff loss to the Bucs after the 2023 season. Then this past week, Sunday Night Football, that was the Eagles' worst offensive performance of the last 2 years based on EPA per drive. That was also the Eagles' second best defensive performance of the last 2 years based on EPA per drive. Put a pin in that last statement because we will circle back to that in a moment. On the offense, I am not saying it is just a Jalen Hurts issue. You can't watch the first 6, 7 dropbacks of this game and think it's just a Jalen Hurts issue when, like you're saying, AJ Brown or Devontae Smith or even Dallas Goedert sometimes just aren't coming down with some of these contested grabs that are in their direction or low and off target stuff. I will say the Jalen Hurts thing, he is just never going to target the middle of the field at the rate, and especially the intermediate portion of the field, that you would want from the top end quarterbacks across the league. Now, at the same time, I think Eagles fans can say, well, he was doing it more often with Kellen Moore, and he's not doing it now with Patullo. That is fair. That is why Kellen Moore, to me, is a very good coach in the NFL when it comes to offensive construction, because he can pull that out of someone like Jalen Hurts, who has just never been comfortable in that area of the field. So you still are going to have to, from the Eagles' perspective, if they're going to win the Super Bowl, win with these downfield, isolated one-on-one shots when they have the opportunities. My concern is, one, short-term-ish with Lane Johnson being out. I think this team's going to have to go to more 3- and 5-step drops and get the football out into their playmakers' hands earlier rather than these downfield, high variance type targets down the field, because that is actually probably where Jalen Hurts, in terms of quick game, is at his best. Get the football out, as we've seen in these Dallas Goedert screens or tunnel screens to wide receivers and all that stuff. The issue is, at the same time, you don't have a running game that can allow you to get into, other than when you play like the Lions or teams of that sort, these isolated, vertical, stack the box looks to give AJ Brown and Devontae Smith these chances. The rushing game, it might get there in the playoffs, but we're through 11 weeks now, and only against the New York Giants, it has worked, right? So the other caveat is this defense is even better than the one that basically shut out Patrick Mahomes last year. This defense is going to allow this offense to go through growing pain after growing pain, as we have seen the last few weeks and the entire season. So that is kind of their get out of jail free card right now. And in fact, this defense has a chance, if they get to the Super Bowl, to straight up win that individual game for this team, despite the offense performing at the level it is right now.
Completely agree. The Jalen Phillips trade is going to be one of the best of the season. And then Quinyon Mitchell's completely graduated, where he's one of the best corners in the league, healthy wise right now. I'm not even sure if there is one. I think that him versus Derek Stingley, I think it's a legit argument at this point. They're better at linebacker 2 spot. There's still a lot of holdovers from the previous season, and they're just getting some good defensive tackle play on top of it. So I see the same thing. The one thing on offense I do think that they can absolutely get better at is how many non-runaway routes there are against man coverage. It's a lot of big kind of curl routes right now. You're not seeing the rub routes and mesh concepts or big crossers and stuff. It's more back shoulder balls and comebacks. And last week, for example, Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, they collectively had 10 yards after the catch, despite being left on islands and stuff. So even when an AJ Brown catch was caught against man coverage, it was on a big curl route where it's much easier for a defensive player to kind of contain him rather than a big crossing route. So it's pretty static offense. So I do think that if there's one way that they can turn this thing around, it would be you got to change up have a little bit more fun in the pass game, switch releases. It can't just be the tunnel screens that we're talking about here and getting into duo runs and then throwing play action on top of it. You have to have a little bit more creativity with AJ Brown, because he's no longer the player where it's it doesn't matter. He's just going to run right by somebody. If he's a step lower because of his knee history, then we have to adjust the offense. And that's something that through 11 weeks, it's pretty tiresome to keep talking about that.
Totally. And it wasn't the case in the stat sheet, but I'll continue to say that Devontae Smith is just performing at the top wide receiver level versus AJ Brown just on the field when watching them, create separation, sustain it, all those types of things. Look, I actually buy into there's some frustration inside of the Eagles building. I don't think that is just from a quarterback standpoint. I think it's probably from the player standpoint when it's, we go from Kellen Moore to this, like the route spacing from the wide receiver stuff. There was one where I literally couldn't tell if Jalen Hurts was targeting Dallas Goedert or AJ Brown because they were occupying the same exact area of the field. And yeah, when wide receivers don't get the football, then, they're going to have some thoughts and feelings about that. But just overall, when you're in a locker room and you did what you did last year in terms of explosive plays and efficiency and just enjoyment of going out there every single series, knowing that, we can move people in the ground game, and then that opens everything up in the passing game. Yeah. When you're not getting that, then of course you're going to be frustrated. And then that leads me to be frustrated when I watch this team, because I just saw them last year be so much better. So frustration is okay. And that doesn't mean I think the Eagles suck. They just aren't nearly as enjoyable to watch on offense as they were last year. But guess what? Defense right now, this is one of the top units in the league, bar none.
Yeah, last 2 years with Fangio, they've won 84% of their games, including the playoffs. And right now they're the number one team in the NFC based off of standings. They're going to have to go into Philadelphia to beat that defense. It's a tough task. Even if the offense is not as good as it was last year, still absolutely a contending team. And the way that they do play offense, if they do get an explosive run for Saquon Barkley, or if they do get a big Devontae Smith, AJ Brown down the field game, which they're absolutely capable of, those are the games where the Eagles win by 2 touchdowns because they're super explosive through the air. It's just we're not getting that as frequently, but I can see they get hot in 3 games in a row. And it's like a very similar format to what we saw last year.
Right. I think, again, the frustration is if they were playing like they were last year, they would be multiple tiers better than any team in the NFL at this point. And they're not, because they do have flaws. They have fatal flaws on offense right now. So, and we'll see if the Lane Johnson injury pulls even more of those out moving forward. All right, let's talk about the opposite end of this game. And that was the Detroit Lions. There's a reason, Hayden, that we talk about projected team totals and what the books, have for these teams on a weekly basis. Because as we brought up prior to week 11, the Lions had not been projected for as little and as few as 22 points in a game since week 1. And then after we finished our Sunday show, turning on the second half of the Lions and Eagles game, it felt very much like that first game against the Green Bay Packers, when in this one, they could only muster 9 points offensively.
I think in the offseason, we talked about the Lions are a little bit worse this year than last year because the interior offense of line was completely revamped. And we had an injury a couple weeks ago at the guard spot that I think really kind of showed with Jared Goff in the weather against a really good defense that we're talking about. So all the narratives, it was like a pretty as expected game from them. I'm not writing them off in the playoffs. The rest of the regular season for fantasy purposes, I think it's a dome game every single week. So we're not going to have the same concerns with Jared Goff, California kid, going into Philadelphia here. But also Sam Laporte has been a very effective player for them before. So I think the Eagles, some of their skill guys aren't as good this year. I think with the Lions, I think their offensive line is just not as good as it has been previously. And those are the little margins. Now the Lions can still go crazy here. I'm expecting Amon-Ra to bounce back. He got really just kind of out physicaled at times against a really good Eagles secondary and linebacker group. But Jared Goff inside with a regular offensive line, it's going to go well. When you don't have those two things, it doesn't.
Well, you can relate. You California kids, when you see
no
just
chance.
a glimmer of it hitting a 3 and as the first digit in a football game, you have zero chance. I mean, this does go back multiple years. Ben Solak pointed this out from 2016 until now, when the temperature is less than 50 degrees or something. He has less than a 60% completion rate. Obviously in this game, it was 14 of 37 for 255 yards. And, a large portion of those were after the catch to Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams. It wasn't down the field stuff. I remember back to Jared Goff's game. It was either against Cal or Oregon coming out, and it was pouring down rain. It was either his first or second year as a starter at Cal. And they had to remove him from the game because he literally couldn't hang on to the football. So that doesn't happen when they're in the dome. That doesn't happen in the vast majority of games. But this is something we do have to keep in mind when we get to the playoffs and we see, Vegas projecting 22 points, which, by the way, is very much different to then what they are projected for this week at 30.5. So after, Jahmyr Gibbs finishes last week as the running back 12 in points per game, guess what? He's going to be ranked as a top 3-4 guy this week, most likely.
Yeah, Gibbs about to go crazy, I think. The rest of the schedule opens up at home. Did want to note, just real quick, the Lions, their deep targets have been caught at a below average clip, and Jared Goff is one of the best downfield passers when he's kept clean inside the dome. He's actually maybe one of the actual best in terms of just on target rate. That's just been a weak spot for the Lions so far this season. I think down the stretch, we'll see some more explosive plays, hopefully to Jameson Williams. But yeah, they're going to have right now, they're the 7th or 8th seed, and you're going to have potentially the Packers, the Seahawks, the Eagles, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In January, you're going to be on the road, and all those teams don't have domes. So it's something that's always just going to be in the back of my mind with the Lions.
Yeah, I know that if you look at a lot of lists right now, because technically they are, I believe, 3rd in the NFC North right now, that if the playoffs started today, the Lions would not be in the playoffs. According to The Athletic and their playoff predictor, they have an 81% chance. It's actually the highest of the NFC North. So there is no worry in my brain of the Lions missing the playoffs here.
And the Dan Campbell 4th down stuff, he's been so good at it. That was just noise. They just didn't go his way. It is what it is. That's what happens when you face the Eagles. You have to be consistent
with it. That's the number one thing about him is if you're consistently making that decision, which is, again, very much different than the Mike McDaniel decision when actually the model said to kick it at that moment, then you'll come out on the right side of that decision more often. Just final note here on Jameson Williams. I know it's been so rocky all season long, but without Sam Laporta, he is going to be a featured player on this team every single week. And to me is locked in at a worst wide receiver 3 mark moving forward until Sam Laporta gets back.
I think I'll have him wide receiver 18 or something like that this week.
Okay, let's talk Monday Night Football. A grotesque occasion that makes me wish I could just turn off a football game at halftime, but I can't do that. My heart, my brain won't allow me to. We'll start with the good stuff here with the Dallas Cowboys. 4 touchdown passes for Dak Prescott, 9 for 144 and 1 for George Pickens, 5 for 66 and 1. And this is despite not playing in the first series because of some type of suspension or punishment. Who knows what happens in Vegas, because we know it stays there.
I was going to say Las Vegas. There's your answer.
They got their Jermaine Burton on. Is that what you're saying?
I would guess.
Anything you want to say about this Dallas Cowboys offense?
I mean, George Pickens is absolutely T. Higgins from last year. He's going to be a top 10 guy rest of the way. Dak Prescott's playing out of his mind. The entire offensive line is healthy again. Remember, there was multiple injuries as we kind of went into October. That's no longer the case. It's a well-coached team. Love Shoddy, love Clayton Adams, love Dak Prescott behind a quality offensive line. And then George Pickens has always been this dude. And we're starting to see different styled routes from him and more yards after the catch ability. It's that little shallow cross where he picked up a big first down. That was awesome. He's an elite player, and the Cowboys are very lucky to have him. And if they have to bench him for a drive every week to get this production, that's a trade-off we're going to have to accept.
He's the wide receiver 4 in points per game right now. Again, if we think back to that Eagles matchup when Hayden, we caught some flack for suggesting everyone drafting George Pickens, and then, one-on-one against Quinyon Mitchell. It's not going to happen. But you draft him for the entire season, and look where we are here in week 12. Now, despite all that, what I appreciate about the Cowboys, one, their defense looked a lot better, but we'll talk about maybe why here in a moment, is they're going to be in the hunt or not eliminated section of these playoff graphics for a very long time. And that just means the offense is still going to play at a really high level and push the pedal to the floor. And that's also despite having just a 10% chance of making the playoffs this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit too late. Remember, the NFC North and NFC West are just completely loaded. So it's just hard for them to kind of claw themselves out of this. But I'm expecting them to finish top 3, top 5 in points this season. And Dak Prescott's going to go absolutely crazy. And just really cool to see this. Jake Ferguson scored a touchdown, but Jake Ferguson's usage, in terms of the per drop back numbers, is definitely taking a hit right now. And that makes sense to me. Why would you throw the ball to Jake Ferguson when you can throw the ball to George Pickens, especially when you have the amount of time that they had this last game.
And I know that missed 4th down walk-in touchdown to CeeDee Lamb ruined about 3,000 fantasy teams wins and losses last week. Hayden, question here. Can the Cowboys afford to keep both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens?
I looked into this because if you go on like over the cap, you'll see they're like $46 million over the cap for this next offseason. You can restructure CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott's contract. They have guys, I'll mention it again, like Kenny Clark, where you can save like $22 million moving on from Trayvon Diggs. So it looks like a scary number. The way that the contracts are actually set up, there's a very reasonable case that George Pickens is at least going to get the franchise tag. They would be smart to extend him so they can actually like spread out some of the cap numbers, because you'll get shocked. You'll open up over the cap and Dak Prescott will say $74 million cap hit next year, which is insane. They can restructure some of this stuff, but they're going to have to like reset some of their defensive players like Diggs and Clark and a couple others. They might be seeing the exit.
Using the phrase, they'd be smart, and contracts with the Jones family and, getting ahead of these numbers and restructuring them and so on and so forth is never as easy as it sounds from their regard. Just overall, the dynamic of the Pickens-Lamb relationship is so good on the field because their skill sets complement each other so well. This allows CeeDee Lamb to be an inside to outside player. You can isolate him versus basically whoever you want, get him in motion, get him free releases. And then you have George Pickens as, your outside go-to player that they've also moved around in some of these matchups. And they're also running more and more in breakers than he ever did with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or name your Steelers quarterback over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's just awesome.
All right, people. My wife and I just moved into a new home. You know the drill. You get inspections, you get estimates, things to fix, the plumbing, the HVAC, the electrical, the roof, all that type of stuff. If you are going through a similar thing right now, I implore you to add life insurance onto that list. First of all, it's a lot easier to obtain and it's far, far less expensive. And I'll point you in the direction of Ethos, where you can get up to $3 million in coverage. And some policies are as low as $2 a day that are billed monthly. The reason why it's easy is that it is not complicated and it is 100% online. There is no medical exam required, and you can only answer a few questions, and that's all that you need. You get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. When I signed up for life insurance, someone came to my door at 7:30 in the morning, sat in the kitchen around the dining table with them for an hour and a half. That was not with Ethos. So again, protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. It is much, much simpler. Get your free quote at ethos.com/the show. That is ethos.com/the show. You never think about life insurance. Hopefully this forces you to do that now. Let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. This was brutal. I mean, the Cowboys have been shredded by everyone this year, literally everyone. And the Raiders could only muster 16 points. They are 2-8 right now. And if you look at the rest of their schedule, it might even get worse from here because they still have the Browns, the Broncos, the Eagles, the Texans, and the Chiefs defenses on the schedule the rest of the way. I mean, those are 5 of the top 10 defenses in the NFL. Easily. This Raiders offense is in such dire straits at this moment. They can get nothing going. Even if they get 30, 40, 50 yards on a drive, it totally shits themselves when they get to the red zone. It is completely unwatchable. We don't have to rehash everything about how they tried to skip the line and so on and so forth, but there is no fix in sight for it the rest of the way here.
Yeah, offensive lines just always starts there, and they can't block it up for Ashton Genty. So that's why the Raiders, over like the last month with Brock Bowers back, they're second in neutral pass rate. So they've like given up on the Ashton Genty stuff, which I fully understand because the Ashton Genty runs don't go anywhere. We both brought it up. There was that report from The Athletic about they're just like a developmental guard that could have been playing. He's a rookie because Jackson Powers Johnson is now on injured reserve. And after watching him in practice, they just deemed he wasn't ready. And then, for example, like they have another tackle that they drafted, I believe, in the 3rd round. Yep. He's not ready. They have a defensive tackle that's been healthy scratch. Deontay Thornton's been healthy scratch. Besh, I think, also has been healthy scratch before. That's a lot of 2nd and 3rd and 4th round picks who are just healthy scratch on a team that does not have a lot of talent. Throw in like the Geno Smith trade, which I did appreciate at the time, but they got that one wrong. Just the buy-in with Geno Smith and this offense, the Chip Kelly stuff. It's the worst offseason of the year the Raiders did in terms of the coaching staff, the trades, the free agent signings, and then the draft picks have just been miserable. I mean, they can't even get on the field. Like the fact that you had 3 rookies skill players against the Cowboys with like no competition, and they like combined for like 40 yards. Like that's just like completely unacceptable.
And so many missed tackles on defense on top of it. Ted Nguyen had the report. Ted does a fantastic job over The Athletic and always has his eye on the Raiders. He's a friend of the show here. His report, quote, according to a source with the Raiders, the staff tried to start rookie guard Caleb Rogers, who I believe was the 98th overall selection initially. But in practice, he was so bad with just getting basic assignments down that they felt it would be disrespectful to other players to start him just because of draft position. And then the 99th overall pick, who was Charles Grant, who you said, William and Mary, developmental tackle, is, quote, still too raw as of right now to play. I never played offensive line in college, and especially not the NFL, but not understanding like basic assignments after 10 weeks at that point of an NFL season, when you also had mini camp and training camp, seems like a coaching issue. It seems like an evaluation issue. It seems like a player development issue, and it's probably a personal issue for those guys too.
Yeah. I mean, it's every issue that you can possibly drop is
61
down.
out there, the right guard, the filling guy, was on his ass just as much as I was watching this game from the couch.
Yeah, no, that is very true. I will say the right tackle has been really bad this year, and they could have drafted Armand Membu right there. So yeah, it's just a disaster class for the Raiders, and they're going to have to make a big decision as they're going to have a really high pick. There's just some draft guys that might be on the table for him. Do you want to stick with this coaching staff or do another one and done for the Raiders with the new quarterback this next year? They can get out of the Geno Smith contract. It's going to cost a lot of money to do so, but if they want to go that route, they certainly can. At least we have Brock Bowers fantasy production. He's just going to get there. There's nothing like super fancy about the Brock Bowers targets last week. A lot of just stuff underneath, dropped one screen. They have really no other option at this point. I still appreciate Trey Tucker, and I do think that he'll have some wide receiver 3 moments, but yeah, like the rest of the season with that schedule, they will be right there with the Browns, the Titans, you name those offenses, 16, 18 points, kind of in that range.
We'll talk about the Titans a little bit later on. But this is why we do the show with projected points, where the Raiders were, and they had 2 guys going in the top 24. Obviously, we're like the Browns were projected, and obviously you have the Titans on top of it. You're basically going to get no good values out of that group other than the guy that missed all of training camp at running back because he had an investigation going through him. And so like it was impossible to nail down his draft value in Quinshon Judkins. So look, Vegas misses, the books miss in terms of projected totals throughout the entire season, but at least that's why we have the conversation of, hey, should we really be buying into 1, 2, 3, 4 of these picks at any given round? Because at the end of the day, they might not help your team at all.
Yeah, and I still can't explain this year Geno Smith versus the multiple other years I watched of Geno Smith where he was playing good football, and it's just like now all of a sudden it's just completely gone.
All right, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Major changes for them the rest of the way on a season that has been incredibly frustrating and a roller coaster for their fan base. So Michael Penix is out for the season. I believe, Hayden, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a partially torn ACL in the other knee than the one he's already had procedures on at this point. And Drake London is out for multiple games with his own leg injury, hip injury, whatever it is, at the end of the game on the final target that he had. So that is the 2 most important offensive players for this team, other than Bijan Robinson. We just talked about this team being a roller coaster. They've put up points, but here they are here heading into week 12 and projected for only 18.5 points on the road against the New Orleans Saints.
Think about how much offensive investment they've made like over the last 4 years, and it's still below average unit. So the Michael Penix stuff, we'll obviously have months to talk about this in the offseason, but assuming he does have ACL surgery again, he's not live for week 1 necessarily. And has he done enough in this season to like make sure that he's for sure the guy? I'm not sure. Without Drake London, who's been to me by far the most valuable player on this entire team, him and Bijan obviously, but Drake London is like the entire pass game. Without him, it's like Kyle Pitts, you're dealing with his drops, and then he's got a very like particular skill set on how you use him. Darnell Mooney like still can't catch the ball, and then I guess like spinning it for this week, the Kirk Cousins stuff, he just has no juice. Like maybe you could have sold yourself where, hey, another year after the torn Achilles, maybe he adds a little bit of velocity this year in limited reps. It's just not
the ball
going to happen
dies
for him. Yeah, it's just not going to happen for him. And he has nobody to throw the ball to. Like Mooney can't catch the ball. They got like USC quarterback David Sills out
Who's
there.
actually separating a little bit.
Yeah, but then he's still a wild card out there, man. Like
Totally.
and now both guards are hurt. The right tackle's been out for forever. You lost your center.
Yeah.
It's a disaster. And I think heads will roll. I think it'll start for sure with the front office, but I'm not sure if Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson and all these guys are going to be able to survive this one as well. I think we're looking at one of the worst offenses in the league for like the next couple of weeks.
Well, they just had a terrible plan going into it because the wide receiver coach got fired. And then we saw Zach Robinson go from calling plays in the booth to the sideline. And again, it's matched up with the inconsistencies that they've shown all season long. I do not want to pile on Michael Penix, but I just want to state a couple facts here. At this point, he's going to turn 26 in May, and he has 12 career starts in the NFL. I got a response saying, hey, 26 does not matter about his age. To me, it does. Like 12 games started at 26 years of age, now also with 3 knee injuries over the last handful of years. Compare that to the guys that we have seen turn things around over the last few years at the quarterback position. Sam Darnold had started 54 plus games before turning 26. Baker Mayfield 45 plus. Daniel Jones 53 plus. Again, that's 12 for Michael Penix. And that's important because that is on-field experience. That is seeing defenses, that is seeing coverages, that is making mistakes, but also having victories in between there and learning from all of those experiences. And he just does not have that other than, a great season that he had at Washington right now. So, and who knows who's going to be calling plays for him in the future. It's just having that whole entire offseason be about, we're going to get the quarterback right. And arguably they haven't gotten it right. And then this past offseason saying, oh, well, we got our quarterback who had made 3 starts in his career. So we're going to trade now a potential top 10 to top 5 pick in the 2026 draft for a pass rusher, because Atlanta has never had a pass rusher in the last 10 years. That's why you don't make that trade when your starting quarterback has just 3 career starts underneath his belt.
Yeah, it was a completely volatile trade, and they're going to be exposed for it right now. They're dead last in completion percentage over expected on their deep targets this year. So like Michael Penix in theory is this like big, strong-armed quarterback. The ball just kind of sprays on him. And I think that the age thing that you're talking about is a concern because he has I think footwork issues and the way he strides it out and stuff. He's been getting probably real quarterback lessons for 15 years now, and we have not seen the improvements. Like one thing you can sell me on a Josh Allen at 21 years old, coming from Wyoming in the middle of California. He's not like all the way ready, but now we're talking about somebody who's been at Power 5 conferences for a long time and then the NFL for a couple of years. We still see those issues. To me, that's where I see a limited ceiling with Michael Penix. So we'll see. By the way, for draft position stuff, they get the Saints and the Jets the next 2 weeks. Then the schedule, it gets really difficult. So you better win these next couple games, or that pick is going to be like the 4th, 5th overall pick. But now you have to do it with the Darnell Mooney and Kirk Cousins connection, which has been miserable this year. And that's what you're kind of saving your season over.
Right. And Kyle Pitts is playing 93% of snaps and hasn't made an impact at all on top of that too. Look, I'm not saying James Pierce is not a good player. He is a speed rusher, power moves on top of it, and makes an impact, every couple of series on top of it. At the same time, he can be a weak run defender, and they just lost a game that they had 5 sacks in, right? These are all facts here.
Yep. When I say they're light in the shorts, why? It's because the 2 edge rushers that they have are 245 pounds.
Yeah. Now, I understand they also got Armani Watts as a starter there. Cool. Thumbs up. You have 5 draft picks in the 2026 NFL draft at this point.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. Yep.
We'll move on. We and me forgot to cover the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. That was my first F up to that degree all season long. So we want to spend a little bit extra time for those Texans and Titans fans here. So first we'll go to the winning team here. The Houston Texans are among the highest in the league in terms of getting their rookies on the field after the bye week. T. Higgins has gotten that rookie bump. Unfortunately, Jalen Noel hasn't. He's still behind Xavier Hutchinson and Christian Kirk. And Woody Marks, while it didn't end up as a huge fancy day, again, led this backfield in just about every single metric, including just overall snaps, 66% to Nick Chubb's 26%. Unfortunately, because of this offensive line against, a healthier Titans defensive line, he had 6 runs of 0 or negative yards in the game.
Yeah, when we get to the Titans, remember, Jeffrey Simmons is back. That changes up the whole defensive line for the Titans there. Woody Marks, he's playing a bunch. He's the running back 21 in usage this month. He will have better days. And then this Thursday night, it's the Bills, who teams have been choosing to run the ball a lot against him, and they've struggled to stop the run. So Woody Marks is absolutely a play. Jaden Higgins, I'm seeing kind of the same things that I was expecting from him as a second-round pick, where he, I think, catches the ball pretty cleanly. He's got enough size. He can kind of run a lot of different routes, even though he's not super explosive like some other second-round picks out there. But I think that he's been a nice find for them. I'm glad they're playing him more. But really, like, for my tape reaction was Davis Mills can really spin that football. There was an incredible third down play on the game-winning drive, an out route to Nico Collins. You could not have thrown the ball more on time, with more anticipation, right on the money, with more velocity than what Davis Mills had. And obviously Nico Collins continues to absolutely ball out. But you called it. You asked me like last week, is Davis Mills like a top 5 backup? I think he is. And he's going to have some warts. He's not going to create that many plays out of structure, absolutely. But he can absolutely spin that football. And Nico Collins has been number 1 in usage this month, largely with the big neck guy.
Now, just like Mac Jones, Davis Mills is under contract for the 2026 season on top of it. They signed a 1-year extension, which was very smart in that regard. I'm with you. He's a top 4, top 5 backup quarterback in the league, and he keeps these guys afloat, and he's giving them chances. It is cool to see these big, tall wide receivers running very similar routes in Nico Collins and Jaden Higgins. And that's going to give us, fantasy production moving forward. Maybe not to the same degree that CJ Stroud, but they are playing Thursday Night Football. And then I would expect CJ Stroud to then play in week 13. So they're only projected for less than 19 points right now, but that should at least make for an entertaining game against this Bills defense.
Yeah, Bills' corner's been pretty strong recently. They got a first rounder in there, and then their number 1 corner is actually very physical and very good. Right. So, but Nico's been awesome. He's been so good. Yeah,
we'll talk about the running back rankings tomorrow. By the way, subscribe to the channel. Hopefully you are. I'm nervous that this Texans offensive line just isn't good enough to make good on the weakness of the Bills defense.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
All right, Tennessee Titans. Let's do a Cam Ward deep dive, because number 1 pick, they're very bad, almost unwatchable on a weekly basis. You and I both dug into a few games, not just this past weekend.
Yep.
So let's talk about it. What do you see when you watch Cam Ward, and what do you see when you watch the Titans offense right now?
So the pros are he can really spin the football. Like, there's big out routes, corner routes, where when he's on time and throwing that thing, it is a thing of beauty. And he really reminds me of Jordan Love, might be like an upside comp. And that's kind of where I was pre-draft as well, where he can absolutely throw the ball down the field into the sideline. Not every single quarterback can. He is not that athletic, though, and he's making some of the Caleb Williams mistakes where the ball is just like fumbling out of his hand, or he's trying to buy some time out of the pocket, which he has to behind this offensive line, which is like below average to me. But he does not have the same like escapability as some of the other modern young quarterbacks that we're talking about. Maybe that was like my second biggest takeaway is there's a little bit of a limit to what Cam Ward could be athletically out of structure. Now, that has not been that big of a problem for like Jordan Love, for example, who can make enough plays throwing the ball downfield, but he only has 7 scrambles with a positive EPA on the entire season. He takes a ton of sacks. A lot of that is him trying to bail out, right, and just does not have the speed there. And I think the last note I'll make is if he's going to win, he has to play better in structure, and he's a little bit of a drifter and a little bit loose with his mechanics, I would say. And I think that's going to take a little bit of time. And we always talk about how much experience in the NFL matters. I think for Cam Ward to hit his ceiling, I think it's going to take a long time, because I don't see enough escapability there where he's going to have to like really be strong reading out defenses. And I think it's kind of tightening where he is in the pocket. And I don't think that's like an overnight change. So I'm going to be intrigued by the Cam Ward stuff for a very long time, because the arm talent's like really hard to find. But I would not be surprised if this takes a 3rd, 4th, 5th year in the NFL to like really see the Cam Ward like top 10 potential.
So you took it very close to as an individual Cam Ward. I'll zoom out a little bit and just look at the Titans offense as a whole, because I think Titans fans, after, having the number 1 overall pick, naturally would get very excited. New quarterback coming in. Oh, we find they're going to have an offense, put it all together, make our mark, be entertaining on a weekly basis. And it's anything but that.
Yeah.
And so they're very frustrated at this moment, and even questioning of, okay, what can Kim Ward's future be? Do we need to bring in a veteran quarterback on top of this? To me, the Titans have an offensive environmental problem, and you have to figure that out before you can say that they have a quarterback problem. Like the play caller and offensive line coach, we know they're a package deal. It's literally father and son. The offensive line has not and continues to not play to their draft capital, which was heavy investments over 2 drafts and then a free agency process on top of it. The offense, unspectacular. I'm still trying to figure out, hey, what is this thing? And, some underlying metrics kind of paint that picture. Right now, the Titans are first in the NFL with 78% usage of 11 personnel on every single snap. All right. That's while using shifts and motion at the second lowest rate in the NFL. Then they're under center just 25% of the time, which is 24th in the league. And they're number 1 in just 3-by-1 sets. That's all very vanilla. It's all very basic. And there are probably a whole bunch of reasons for that, right? 1, rookie quarterback. 2, always trailing. 3, play caller who designed the offense is out the door, and you bring in someone else. And so you're just kind of trying to get to the end of the season with the things in mind. But that inspires no creativity. That inspires nothing in terms of diagramming and designing and getting these players open of the cool stuff that we see across the league at this very moment. And that's not even considering, the offensive line playing many tiers down compared to the investments that they made. I am with you. Some of the downfield shots he makes, like the 3rd and 8 outbreaker that he hit with anticipation to DK this week, sweet. Then that pump hole shot to Chigaquanko on 2nd and medium, awesome. He has these throws on like every other series or every 3 series that, to me, again, if he was given a better environment, you would be able to see them more often. You'd be able to get into the 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 5 situations. And instead, he has these Will Levis moments because he is a drifter, like you said, or he's a scrambler to the right and doesn't necessarily have the athleticism to outrun an NFL edge rusher, and especially top tier edge rushers like the Houston Texans had this weekend. I still think he should scramble more, but I think he needs to get vertically on those. He has 14 scrambles this season. I thought the same thing at Miami, and those 14 scrambles are like really low ranking across the NFL. So I'm not just saying Cam Ward hasn't done anything wrong. He definitely has, and he believes in his arm a bit too much, and all that type of stuff makes wayward throws. I just believe because of the arm, like you're saying, that he is going to have enough when he at least, and the surrounding environments, at least goes from awful to average in a whole bunch of spots.
Yeah, I think his wide receivers have been dropping too many passes. See the same thing with the offensive line. It's not brutal offensive line. It's just not as good as it should be versus the investment, like you said. The scramble stuff I think is kind of frustrating because I think he can do it a little bit more, but I do think there's like an athleticism just kind of ceiling with what you're going to get out of it. He's kind of
late to it too in terms of making that decision where he wants initially to always buy time by drifting. Yeah. And then that puts so much stress on your offensive line. And also at that point, you've kind of lost your athletic advantage or spatial advantage with that. And then if you're late to that and then try to get to the edge, then, a behemoth, a freak of an athlete at edge rusher is going to chase you down or at linebacker.
Yep. My last thing about the scheme, they're asking him to like read things out, downfield concepts all the time, which makes for bad results as a rookie, but he's actually getting the like on-field reps that will make him a better quarterback down the road. So I don't want to like kill the scheme. There's not the easy buttons in this offense, but this team was going nowhere, and they're at least like making him do like full field reads where you will see the occasional like backside dig, for example. You'll see the big corner route. You'll see a big post route as well. He doesn't get to the check down, I think, fast enough. I think that's where it takes multiple years to learn. All right, now I got to get to the check down. Now I need to scramble. Now is the time where I can actually try to push the ball over the middle. And he's a tad late because I think that in college, and we talked about this on the prospect video, he had the arm talent to get there, even if he was a little bit tad late. In the NFL, it's going to be a lot harder to do. And I think that correction will make him a decent quarterback long-term. But that also takes a very, very long time to kind of drill down. So maybe it's like Sam Darnold. Like I can see a like element here where it kind of looks bad for a little bit, then all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of hope because the arm talent to me is really, really solid. So it was kind of about it as what I expected. He's playing better than his numbers are, certainly, because the scheme around him asked him to do a lot of difficult things. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I think it's just going to take a while.
The major negative plays have to go. At the same time, the arm absolutely rips. It's
fun watch. Yeah.
Reading these concepts, like you're saying, and attacking certain pockets in zone coverage, it's there. Now, it's inaccurate sometimes on top of it. And I would love to have him, have an above average wide receiver to throw to and not just a bunch of number 3s and number 4s out there on the field. But I do not watch Cam Ward and come away with, oh, this guy's a bust. He doesn't have it. And you see that with other young quarterbacks across the league over the last 5-6 years. And I'm not in that boat here. Now, with all that said, Hayden, here they are in week 12, projected at home for just 13.5 points against the Seattle Seahawks defense. I think that is the lowest projected team total of the season that I've seen. I remember so far.
Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of sense because the Seahawks do a lot of funky things and Cam Ward is trying to read defenses properly down the field. And that's going to lead to a lot of just bad throws. So I'm cutting him some slack here. The arm is live enough to let this dream live on for multiple seasons. I think like the talent is there. And hopefully we can start dodging some of the Caleb Williams-esque mistakes inside the pocket trying to break out and contain. But Caleb was, I think, flashing a little bit more too as an
and you're comparing that to Caleb like as a rookie, because the second year, obviously his escapability, and I would put Caleb's escapability and athleticism
way
on
above
a different level,
way above than
what Cam Ward. Yeah. Also, Calvin really broke his leg in the first snap of the game after just coming back from injury. So, nothing is going right for this team at all.
I think they have like $106 million in cap space already on the books, and they're going to start shedding some dollars as well. So they're going to have a lot of money to spend. Hopefully they can nail it.
Okay, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. I went back and watched their contest against the Denver Broncos. We'll start with the Chiefs here. Bill Barnwell pointed out that last season in one-score games, the Chiefs were 10-0. This year, they are 0-5 in one-score contests, which basically is a signifier as to why this team has the record at 5-5 on the season. There were some elements of this offense that I did not love when I went back and watched them. What do you want to bring up here on the Chiefs after reviewing the tape?
Classic regression for the Chiefs. I think that this team's actually better than last year's team. They just have to go out there and prove it. And their backs are up against the wall. And that's when the Patrick Mahomes seems to be playing at his best. But they're at that point right now. It's like, it hasn't happened this early in my memory. I think there's a couple problems on offense. Number one, results-based analysis, the Patrick Mahomes downfield shots have just like not been good enough. And like Xavier Worthy should have had over 100 yards and a touchdown, did not get that one. I think even Tyquan Thornton was missed at time, and that's been a problem in the regular season for multiple years. Now, last year in the playoffs, I went back and looked on 20-plus yard throws in the playoffs. He went 4 of 7, which is elite numbers.
I do think two of those, though, were like after they were already blown out in the Super Bowl.
Right, but one of them was that Xavier Worthy against Quarters.
Oh, yeah.
Which was one of the best throws I've ever seen in my life. I know, but that was one of the best throws I've ever seen. What I'm saying is, I think that is something that has happened, and it's been a trend, but I don't think they're going to be, you had the number 30 out of 39 in completion percentage on those. I think that's going to get a little bit better. And still, they're third in EPA per drive. They're third in scoring per drive. So the numbers are there. They have a man coverage issue against wide receivers. Rashid Rice and Xavier Worthy have like positive things about their profile. They are not like get you a dig route on 3rd and 7 against man coverage. And I think we saw that against the Broncos too many times. So that was like something I wanted to bring up. Just Rashid Rice, Xavier Worthy, like with Rashid Rice, like the last couple of years, he's like sitting at like 1.0 yards per route against man coverage. So I think of all the like the elite wide receivers to talk about in fantasy, I think he's the worst like on film to me. But I think that this connection will get a little bit better as the season progresses.
I do want to dial in a bit more on the Patrick Mahomes downfield shots, because the last 2 years have been just flat out bad in that regard. This year, adjusted completion percentage on 20-plus yard throws, which, again, if it's a drop, that counts as a completion per PFF. He's 30th of 39, and then last year he was 36 of 41 quarterbacks just across the league. And it shows up. I mean, it's why, to me, the one-score games or not scoring points against these big-time opponents has popped up for the majority of them this season. Like the second drop back of the game, it's a long ass throw, 60 yards in the air, but Xavier Worthy doesn't even have a chance at the football. Okay.
Yep.
And then a couple plays later, 2 plays later, another miss to Tyquan Thornton. Like these are not even close enough to get a hand on. And I can't explain it. You know, sometimes on the Tyquan Thornton one later on, he almost underthrew it, which to me is smart because it allows Thornton to spin around and make a play on the football. But we saw, you know, Patrick Mahomes be the best downfield thrower in the league with Tyreek Hill, and it's just not happening over the last 2 years. Now, again, like you just said, can we say that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL? And in a 4-game sample, when they get to the playoffs, is that going to work? 100%. But at the larger sample in the regular season of the last 2 years, it hasn't. And again, to me, that is why that they are losing a lot of these one-score contests. And I hear you on like the third and EPA per play or per drive stuff, but to me, that's based on who they have played and the wins that they have in those. Like they put 22 points on the Giants. They beat up the Baltimore Ravens defense by 37 points. Then the Las Vegas Raiders, they put 31 on them. The Commanders, they put 28 on them. Then their losses this year, the offense just has not really posted points like we are seeing from the best offenses across the league. They put 21 on the Chargers in week 1, 17 on the Philadelphia Eagles, then 21 against the Bills, and then just 19 points here against the Denver Broncos. So this should be, on paper, like we always say, the best Chiefs offense with Rushy, with Xavier Worthy, both on the field. Travis Kelce was actually like their best offensive player in this game by winning some man coverage reps and also getting some rub routes down the field on top of it. And yet, here we are. It doesn't look that great at all times.
Yep. No team looks perfect right now. Travis Kelce being like a legit asset is something that we didn't necessarily like take for granted because you just never know with the age cliff. He looks good to me, man. Like he has a couple frustrating drops this season, but yards after the catch wise, he just looks really good. So he's been awesome for fantasy purposes, even with Rashee Rice back. They're actually their man coverage winner right now, which is like crazy stuff given his age. So that's a blessing for them. They still have no explosives on the ground. They really need like Pacheco or somebody else to like step up here, but I think that's just kind of a lost cause at this point. So really, I think the season comes down to Steve Spagnuolo in the playoffs and getting to the playoffs. I think that's a big advantage. But they really need Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy to like really turn into like a very, very, very strong player against man coverage. And we'll see about that. The Xavier Worthy numbers this month, he's the wide receiver 62 on wide receiver 44 usage. Last week was a season low for him. He's just turned into a downfield threat and he has to connect on them, which has not happened very often. So frustrating offense, I think still very good in general though.
Yeah. I don't know if I can call them very good right now. Like certainly they are one of the contenders and they just need to make the playoffs. First of all, you know, that is a barrier they have to get to. I just think Tyquan Thornton is so valuable for this team.
He needs to play. He needs to play.
His relationship with Patrick Mahomes on those downfield passes is better than Patrick Mahomes' relationship with Xavier Worthy, flat out.
Yeah, no, I agree. He needs to be their number 3 guy. And that is just, he's been too good for them.
Let's talk about the Denver Broncos on the opposite end before we go alphabetical order here. Some other EPA numbers that I found interesting. They're the 4th worst EPA in the first quarter. Compare that to 3rd best EPA in the 4th quarter and overtime. And that actually backs up, you know, what it looks like just flat out watching the games too. Overall, general thoughts on the Broncos after week 11.
Yeah, their deep ball stuff with Bo Nix, it goes hot and cold, but when it's on, this offense is actually pretty fun. And that's what's happened in second halves recently. Huge go balls to Cortland Sutton, Pat Bryant, and Troy Franklin in this one in very clutch situations. And Bo Nix has like a lot of arm talent in terms of just like arm strength and ability to throw on the run. So you have these deep shots available to him. He's still very inconsistent reading things out. His accuracy over the middle and underneath is pretty mediocre, I would say. But this is one of these teams where the defense is so good that if Bo Nix either like makes a second year leap all of a sudden or just rides hot based off these downfield throws, the defense is so good that they might be able to actually like make the Super Bowl. I think that would be like pretty low odds, but it is like there is a chance like that could happen when they get Patrick Surtain back. That's how good this defense is. And if they can kind of like get rid of some of the Marvin Mims moments, get a little bit rid of the Evan Ingram moments and start like leaning into Cortland Sutton in these shot plays, I do think that they can kind of run like volatility wise on some of their deep passes, because that's like been the like pretty much the saving grace of the Broncos offense this year.
Well, they kind of have gotten rid of two of those players. Evan Ingram has only played on 59% of dropbacks this past week. Marvin Mims is barely playing at about 20% of snaps right now. If you're in a 32 team fantasy league out there, our guy Pat Bryant continues to like start drives, and he is this team's wide receiver 3 at this moment. So I'm excited for that. Overall, I think people want to know about RJ Harvey, who played a lot, about 61% of the time, 11 carries, 30 yards, got another 3 receptions for 20 yards on top of it. Team really struggled to run on this Chiefs defense. It makes sense. They're quite good, but they were still creative to get Harvey numerous opportunities in the receiving game. And I also thought that he converted a number of 3rd and short, 2nd and short runs for first downs, which would have previously been a role that went to J.K. Dobbins. But Sean Payton trusted him to just run the ball straight up the middle to convert, again, 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s.
Yeah, the Broncos offensive line it's very, very good. It's like, I think that's just where you can kind of fall back to, and that allows them to run the ball and then also allows them to hit these shot plays down the field. Jaleel McLaughlin got the only inside the 5-yard line carry, converted it for a touchdown there. I'm not sure if that's like guaranteeing that he's going to be the goal line back, because like you said, RJ Harvey did get plenty of like short yardage looks. It's just not at the goal line. So I think he'll be fine for fantasy. I don't think we're going to see like a crazy breakout from RJ Harvey, but he's, I think, very firmly in RB2, especially when the matchups get a little bit cleaner than the Chiefs defense.
Before we get into the rest of the teams, if you want to support us, the best way of doing that is to go and support Underdog. We're in over 40 states at this point, 20 plus states in terms of prediction markets. I don't know, 2-3 years ago, you could not have played on the Dog app. 6 months ago, maybe not. If you're in Florida, Texas, Georgia, California, Missouri, Oregon, now you can. So use promo code the show or click the link in the description down below. And if you play $5 your first time, I'll give you $100 in bonus cash. How about that?
Sounds good.
So go and do it. Go and support us by supporting Underdog. All right, let's dive into it. We got to start with the Jacoby Brissett led Arizona Cardinals team. I mean, 47 completions, an NFL record. Hopefully his jersey is somewhere in Canton, Ohio at this moment. One injury, Amari DiMercato is out. So we are back to the ways of Bam Knight. And also Michael Wilson filled in for the non-appendix of Marvin Harrison Jr. Hopefully he has a fast recovery, but we don't know when that recovery is going to be. What do you think of Michael Wilson in a full-time starting role as the primary outside pass catcher for this team?
Michael Wilson just could do a little bit of everything. He's got some inside-outside ability to him. I think he's a pretty clean route runner. He's not super crazy athletic, but I just think he's a reliable target. And with Jacoby Brissett, he's running more routes that are like valuable to fantasy. I think he was running a lot of clear routes with Kyler Murray because they want to create the explosives down the field. That's what Kyler Murray's good at, but it's not exactly where like Michael Wilson wins. But now with Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball over the middle, throwing some timing routes to the perimeter, you're seeing Michael Wilson kind of win in that intermediate level. I was pretty impressed with the tape. There was also 7 or 8 completions where it was just like a 3-yard little hitch or whatever, not giving him a bunch of credit for there, but that was like 5 best plays. That was like real stuff to me. And he's a year 3 guy. And I think with Marvin Harrison probably missing another game after removing an organ from his body, I think that Michael Wilson is in line to be a very, very, very good fantasy play once again.
Now, the schedule is not easy here for the Arizona Cardinals, which, by the way, really like the the Michael Wilson 3rd and 3 slot fade, gain of 34, excellent body control, really, really tough grab on there. The schedule's tough. Jacksonville, Tampa, Rams, Texans defense over the next 4. With that in mind, Jacoby Brissett, since he's been the starter of this team, quarterback 7, 12, 10, 10, 4. This kind of goes back to the experience portion of the program that I brought up with Michael Penix.
Yep.
That Jacoby Brissett has just seen all of these defenses and coverages in the past. He knows I might suck and this team might really struggle for the opening half, but hey, they're just going to allow me to drop back every single time for 30 straight plays in the fourth quarter while we're trailing. And I'm just going to rip it. I'm going to forget about the bad throw that I threw into triple coverage in the previous snap. And I'm just going to hit that same shot here in the next one, and it might be completed. So that is why we're getting these massive Jacoby Brissett fantasy performances, along with a goal line rushing score over the past couple weeks on top of it. So I enjoy watching Jacoby Brissett play football because it's not just we're going to go in roll on our back and give up. They at least, try to push the ball down the field for all 4 quarters, even when down by 17 or 14 points.
Yeah, and super accurate. He's seen everything, like you said. I totally agree on the experience part, and I think so does Gannon in the offense. They're 3rd in neutral pass rate this month. 3rd. And you would never see that with the Kyler Murray stuff. So, and this is behind not a great offensive line. So you're just going to rely on Trey McBride, the Trey McBride season is outrageous. He has a chance to set the all-time record in receptions for tight ends. He's completely separated even from like Brock Bowers and everybody else, George Kittle. He's a total monster. He's as good of a pick as you possibly could have made. I hope that you guys drafted him in the 3rd round, especially in like full PPR redraft leagues. He's absolutely one of the best picks you possibly could have had. He would be a top 10 pick for me rest of the season. The defense is still struggling, and the offense is ready to go with Jacoby Brissett.
McBride is averaging 14.9 fantasy points per game. That's half PPR right now. That would place him as the wide receiver 8 in points per game, behind Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashee Rice, George Pickens, Drake London, Puka Nacua, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Just going back over the years, that 14.9 number, if you look back to 2024, I got to expand my screen. Dang it. I thought I was going to be able to slick this on the fly. George Kittle last year, number 1 in points per game at 13.2. In 2023, the top tight end was 11.5. That was Sam Laporta's rookie season. You have to go back to Travis Kelce from 2022 at 15.4. Do you think he hits that 15.4 mark the rest of the way with Jacoby Brissett as his quarterback?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, give me the splits with just the Jacoby games. We're talking like 18 points or something ridiculous. Right now he's, with Drake London removed, like this last month, he would have been the wide receiver 1 in scoring. So like it's elite stuff. Like this reminds me of the Travis Kelce era when we're starting to see like a target dominant guy that can really run after the catch. It's a hard profile to find. And with Jacoby Brissett, you're seeing like the ultimate ceiling with it. So super impressed with Trey McBride. His
lowest points scored over the past 5 games, which is the Jacoby Brissett starts, is 14. That's sweet.
What an animal.
We'll talk more about the running backs tomorrow on the running back rankings program. Baltimore Ravens. I'm still waiting for their best offensive performance. I'm sure you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, just the Lamar stuff has been good, not MVP caliber, I'll say, since coming out of the bye. The offensive line maybe isn't as good as it was previously as well. They lost like a lot of big names over the last couple of years there. And even with that, like Lamar still makes some really nice plays. I think they can get to him in the ground game a little bit more as the games get more and more important. But yeah, like it's fair to say that the Derrick Henry stuff, it's been a lot less consistent, and like in terms of success rate, I think that's maybe a 20% of Derrick Henry problem, 20% Lamar hasn't been healthy problem and as good on the ground himself, and then the rest of it offensive line scheme wise. But then still rips off a touchdown or a near touchdown on an explosive. So you're going to get that type of stuff, but miss Rashad Bateman a little bit here. And then the Browns, Myles Garrett it's insane what he's doing. So yeah, the Browns are a hell of a defense, but it's still, I think the Ravens offense is not nearly as good as it was the last couple seasons.
Again, we can say that and then look to week 12. They're projected for 29 points against this New York Jets defense. So I don't want any of the negatives I'm about to say of, Derrick Henry only playing about 56% of snaps and a very neutral game script here to impact my thoughts on them in, week 12, because they can go absolutely nuclear here. So Keaton Mitchell, fun role player. Obviously, Rasheen Ali is taking a couple of the receiving aspects of Justice Hill. It is still amazing that without Justice Hill, they're still making it a 3-person backfield with a couple of targets going in that guy's direction. But Derrick Henry is a really good player. I think we are seeing maybe some signs of the cliff, Hayden, which I never want to say about the big dog. But, against the easiest of easiest opponents this week, we should have a massive Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry game moving forward.
All right. Also just say they're another one of these teams like the Eagles where the defense is like obviously just so much better than where it was a month ago. And that could just make them very dangerous as we get to the rest of the season.
They are a contender on top of everything.
They are.
Buffalo Bills. So going through all these snap counts, Tyrell Shavers actually had the second most wide receiver snaps,
Yep.
but that was just 47% of dropbacks. We know they brought up Gabe Davis. We know that Mecole Hardman was brought up and then subsequently injured in the same game. Who knows what happens with Keon Coleman back in the fold after, he was healthy scratched after apparently showing up late to meetings. But Josh Allen, fantastic. Defense, quite bad. Fatal flaw in certain aspects. Yeah. Anything you want to add about this Bills team?
Yeah, I mean, just the one interception that he had, the like the basketball pass, I still can't get over how miserable that was. One of the worst interceptions of the entire season. It's actually probably the worst one, considering where it was on the field too. But the rest of the game, you got all the Josh Allen like design rush game that makes him so lethal. It's the same problem that we've had with Buffalo for like the last 3 seasons. I would say the defense is worst, especially on the ground right now. But they got better corners now than they did before. So maybe that kind of bails them out here. And then just the skill group is just so lackluster. There's a reason why they play 6 guys and all of them at under 50% snaps is because they don't have a dude. And Khalil Shakir, I like him, but he can't like cosplay as like some like outside number 1 threat either. So he, even without Keon Coleman, still going to be in his defined role. And I feel like he felt the Dalton Kincaid absence a little bit in that. He's just been like the guy that can like create separation on these crossing runaway routes. And we didn't necessarily have that as part of the offense this last week. And still they went crazy because Josh Allen's best plays are just incredible. And then you get the Ty Johnson screen to the house.
Thursday's going to be an awesome, I think, competition, exhibition for them, because this is a style of defense that they're going to face in the playoffs, the Houston Texans, even if the Texans don't make it. And so for a team that we have questions on their individual players, who is going to step up in that moment other than Josh Allen to help them win? And if it's no one and they just make just enough plays to allow them to score the 25 points they're projected for here, that's amazing. But I don't know if this is one of those organizations that we've talked about with the other ones that, if this just goes right, if in a 4-game stretch, then they have enough to do it. I can't pinpoint one player. I guess it would be Don Kincaid, who's out injured for this one, that he is there other on offense, obviously other than James Cook, who is a fantastic talent in his own right.
Yeah, they need Dalton Kincaid back. I will say that. And the other thing to note, I think this is a good game to watch in prime time, is Josh Allen's taking more sacks than he's ever done before. And I think that maybe the offensive line's a little bit worse. I think that the skill group has like completely depleted. So maybe some of these are like, that would have been just a Steph Diggs target. He's holding onto the football for another hitch here in this offense. But Josh Allen used to be like the best of all time in dodging sacks. Now he's like league average. So when you have like this pass rushing duo and then the scheme that the Texans have, that'll be just something to kind of note here. He has to be a superhero for the Bills to win the Super Bowl this year. And he's done that, but he's gone on runs before. But if he's not an MVP caliber player, this team is like an average playoff team to me.
At the same time, this is one of the years a team like this can go all the way. This episode is brought to you by Square, because your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. And by that, I mean, when you're walking at the end of your street, maybe it's a Saturday morning, you just completed a couple chores and boom, you smell that cinnamon roll from the bakery, the patisserie that you're just craving, or your wife stopping home at the end of a work day gets that maple latte that she's been wanting all day long. Heck, it's football season, football weather right now. The place you go to for your favorite wings, or with a buddy that you're both grown up in your mid-30s and have kids, and you just want to get out of the house for an hour and grab a beer or two. That's what the neighborhood is all about. I mean, money spent in the neighborhood stays in the neighborhood. And when we show up as a community, it can be big business for local business owners. You can go to square.com/the show to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy that you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers. I know you rewatched this game. What did you see when going back and diagnosing the tape?
Everybody played well. Like, I couldn't believe like there was like no negative notes like the entire game. So Bryce Young he's always been very accurate and he throws with anticipation. We saw that throughout this game. He also is very tough. And I would say like that was like the big thing that stood out to me on the rewatch of it was there were a lot of throws where there was somebody right in his grill where he was able to get the ball off just in time. And that was super impressive. Also wanted to give a shout out to Jalen Coker on that big crossing route. That was a hell of a release and created some separation. Xavier Legette got over the top of somebody and created real separation, came down with the ball. So those were two guys that have been either out of the lineup or creating negatives. They were creating positives in this one. The big thing, I wanted your opinion on this. This offensive line, it's just been a who's who up front. The pockets. I mean, Bryce Young had a lot of time here against Falcons pass rush. It's been pretty good. This O-line coach is just coming up with like new names. And they've been obviously very good running the ball, but I was pretty surprised by how like clean the pockets were because they're dealing with a lot of injuries and Icky's been up and down throughout his career, but it just felt like the offensive line here in the past game was much better than I've seen with Bryce Young for the 3 years that we've been watching him.
So they actually have two offensive line coaches. One guy does the interior, one guy does the tackles, which really? I think is probably rare across the league, which is very cool. I think Chandler Zavala at right guard is still a liability. Very bad. You could argue one of the sacks that he took, and then obviously the 4th and 1 that Bryce was stepped on. Chandler Zavala is a bit of an anchor. But the rest, you could also argue, were their 4 best offensive linemen to start the season at those 4 spots, even if Austin Corbett was starting over Cade Mays at the center. The same thing I saw, the Legette 4th down conversion. I mean, that's not his primary. Bryce on the rollout cuts it short with the defender in his face, tight window that he threads it over. Again, big time conversion. Like you said, the Jalen Coker conversion. There was another one that 0 separation, another rusher directly in his face, a strike. And then the Tedder McMillan outbreaker, the blocker, I guess it was a tight end or tackle or center. I can't even remember. Gets walked back into the quarterback. He doesn't have really time to step up, and it's still, perfectly timed, accurate, beautiful ball. Overall, it was a season high slot rate for Tedder McMillan. I posted a clip of Dave Canales kind of explaining why. I got some comments of, well, why did it take them until week 11 to figure this out? 1, they were doing it a bit in other games. 2, if you move Tedder McMillan into the slot, then someone has to fill in for him outside. And this wide receiver room has just been in flux all season long. Let's not forget that Jalen Coker, who would be probably the player that does that, missed the opening 4+ games with a quad issue. And then we know Xavier Legette has been a roller coaster all season long. So you have to have someone to fill in for him on the outside. And now with how healthy this group is, they finally have done that. But what that allows for Tedder McMillan is more free releases, not facing AJ Terrell in press coverage over and over and over again, and just setting up certain plays for him. And then I think his dynamic with Bryce is so good. Like on that final touchdown, it was one of the plays that you see with quarterbacks across the league where safety or a linebacker has their eyes on the quarterback, and just the escapability and movement that he has with that pulls him out of direction, and then just lobbed it up perfectly for his wide receiver in the left side of the end zone.
Ted Rose is so impressive, man. Like he's
so good. He's
just one of those guys. He's pretty much good at everything. Like
he 6th in the league in receiving yards. They haven't had their bye week.
I couldn't believe that.
That stands out big time.
But like on that big dig route, yards after the catch, I mean, there was corners chasing him where he was just faster than they were. So I thought he was, we have the receipts for it. I thought he was completely overanalyzed as a prospect, man. I mean, for back-to-back seasons, he averaged 110 yards, and he's big, and he's a good athlete, like no question about it. So the Panthers should be very thankful to have him. It's very hard to find one of these guys, and I think that he's on a Drake London trajectory, which is really, really cool to see.
My guy Tommy Tremble with the 50+ yarder after the catch too on the 3rd read in that concept. Pretty cool stuff. Now, unfortunately, they face the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football. And from watching the Panthers for a very long time, I know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe it can be a high scoring game. They're not stopping the 49ers.
No. Kyle Shanahan's about to put the Panthers backup linebackers under the microscope.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to the Chicago Bears. They're up next. What do you think of the Caleb Williams performance after going back and watching it?
So it's just been a lot of the same where there's some plays left on the field. It's not a perfect showcasing from Caleb Williams. He's, after all, in his 2nd season. We keep preaching about experience that absolutely applies to Caleb, especially in a new offense. It still feels a lot better than where it was at times. And I think like the big thing for Caleb Williams is he's really just solved the sack problem this year. Like that was what the worst of all time or close to it as a rookie. And this year he's playing more on time. That helps. The offensive line's way better. That helps. Ben Johnson's way better. The skill group in general is deeper this year than it was last season. And then on top of that, there's something is to sack avoidance. I think like back with the Anthony Richardson profile in college, Ben Roethlisberger the same way at the end of his career. Some of the guys that are really good at dodging sacks, they're just way too strong. And I'll put Caleb Williams in that bucket. We just talked about with Josh Allen, one of the best of all time. When you can't get tackled on these like arm attempted sacks and you spin out of that, that is an absolute weapon. And we saw that on display here where he would take off and scramble, buy some extra time here. So you can just do a highlight tape with Caleb Williams, just avoiding sacks. And you can just kind of end the clip right after he's avoided the sack. And it is really freaky stuff. So I thought all that was impressive, even if the final results were still pretty mediocre.
Multiple unique sack avoidance plays every single week. You know, every week you think to yourself, oh, well, this defense that blitzes and gets free rushers isn't going to, or is going to be able to get Caleb down in these moments that the other ones did. I mean, there were clean hits that free rushers that Brian Flores drew up on Caleb, and he was still in the grasp, able to avoid them, which is pretty sweet. I saw exactly what you did when it comes to a miss to Rome Odunze on third down early on a vertical route, didn't even give him a chance. Then another miss to DJ Moore, a rollout, left extended miss to DeAndre Swift.
That was bad.
That was all in the first quarter, first quarter. But then after that, the final three, he settled down and then was kind of let down by especially DJ Moore and a couple of these other players and Luther Burden with drops on top of it. So if we ever at some point this season get Caleb hitting those downfield passes in the first quarter, and then DJ Moore or Luther Burden or whoever else, Rome Odunze, being able to have a consistency to their game in quarters 2, 3, 4, then this offense, and hopefully it's on prime time for everyone else to see it versus you and I just going back. Will, I think, have a different opinion overall of the Chicago Bears unit because they are a totally enjoyable watch. I did want to bring up one personnel grouping thing because all of Chicago was upset with Olamide Zaccheaus in the previous week. In just week 11, the team used way more 2 tight end sets and just 3 wide receiver sets on 35% of their offensive snaps. That means Cole Kmet and Colson Loveland played at least 75%. Previous to that, weeks 1 through 10, 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets, 60% of the time. Now, that could just be for Brian Flores getting multiple bodies up there. You know, we'll see moving forward. But to me, this should be their base offense with Kmet, Loveland, and then Odunze, and then whatever other wide receiver they want to put out there.
Yeah, and some of their like 2 wide receiver set stuff, that's when they get Olamide Zaccheaus out there, which I like never really understood. And same thing with Luther Burden, like those would be like the 2 wide receiver set players. Hopefully we just get Rome Odunze back out there for those type of things. The downfield targets, Caleb right now is like 6th in how often he attempts 20+ yard throws. He's still below average in completing them. That there's as many drops as there are just inaccurate throws there, but hopefully over time all that settles down. But there's like real growth here, no doubt about it. I think they're 10th right now in EPA per play. So talk about all the negatives you want with Caleb Williams. The results have largely been there, and he's only getting better at the more he gets experience.
Yep. And again, we're seeing Ben Johnson having comfortability with his personnel and throwing some cool wrinkles in it every single week. And that's not even talking about the rushing attack here on top of it. By the way, Bears face the Steelers in week 12. Steelers, one of the highest rates of man coverage across the league. And that is when Rome Odunze feasts against these opponents.
Yep. It was largely the same kind of rotation for the backfield where DeAndre Swift led them, but Kyle Monangai can still steal a touchdown and have some breakaway runs. And DeAndre Swift, while still just completely erratic, he still makes some big plays, as many as of the negative plays too. So they're just living and dying with it.
Cincinnati Bengals. No surprise, Jamar Chase suspended for week 12. He's appealing. By the time you hear this, I'm sure that appeal was denied. Him saying that if I wanted to spit someone, I would spit on their face rather than on the ground. Rough.
It's so good.
The camera does not lie, sir. Anyways, what I want to bring up here, last season when T. Higgins missed a handful of contests, like off and on, those were the Mike Gesicki nuclear contests. The issue, Gesicki is on injured reserve with a pec injury right now. So I even think that Gesicki and like Noah Fant, for example, are very different players because Noah Fant is a bit more of an inline presence for this team,
Sure.
whereas Gesicki was a glorified slot 2-point stance wide receiver. So I do not have an answer of who is going to fill in for Jamar Chase other than, hey, Joe Flacco and Joe Burrow already enjoy throwing to Andre Yoshivas. And so Andre Yoshivas is going to see a bunch of targets in his direction too.
Yeah, I mean, they're 5th in neutral pass rate, and they can't stop anybody on defense. So there's plenty of targets here. I think that Yoshivas and Noah Fant are both dart throws. And if you're in a deep league with some bye weeks, I do think that you can actually get away with throwing them into the lineup. So we'll see. Teagan's going to go crazy. He'll be very high up in my rankings. It was a really bad game for everybody involved there, and never like someone spitting. That's insane to do that.
Insane.
As an adult man, that's just freaking wild to me that we still do that stuff. But yeah, for fantasy, this is completely streamlined. Also wanted to shout out 2 games without Samaje Perine. Chase Brown's at 22.1 and 16.6 expected points. He's the running back 4 in usage this month because he's playing more without Samaje Perine. It's still a really bad offensive line. You can still have really bad games out there, but we're reaching to the point where it looks like a version of last year where Chase Brown was a fantasy running back 1.
Did you see what Mike Tomlin said when asked what would you advise your players to do if you got spit on? And he said, just do what, comes naturally to you.
Natural. I love it.
Which,
Yeah.
punch him
He's
in
like
the face.
square up. Yeah, he said square up pretty much.
Cleveland Browns. Let's talk about them because, one, their opponent this week is the Las Vegas Raiders. Despite what we just saw on Monday Night Football and how putrid this Raiders defense was, this Browns offense is only projected for 16.5 points. I'm going to assume that Dylan Gabriel is not going to pass concussion protocol, and we are going to get Shedeur Sanders starting this game. So we all were witness to what happened in the final 2 quarters when Shedeur Sanders popped in as the starting quarterback for this team. What'd you see when you went back and watched the all 22?
Yeah, it was really bad. He should have had a pick 6 on a little rollout play where he should have threw it away, and Kyle Hamilton luckily dropped the ball, but that would have been a really bad rep. He just drifts in the pocket. All the pressure is I think could be blamed on him. And unfortunately for him, the Browns grade out over the entire course of the season as the worst pass protecting offensive line in the NFL, which you can say that's exactly what happened at Colorado. And he was able to get away with it in college. He's just not going to be able to here. So I'm very concerned about what this offense is going to look like. I think the lowers on the Underdog Pick'em lobby, I will be visiting those. I think lower on the team total, I will be visiting those. And we'll see. Maybe he can complete some passes that he just missed outside the pocket. He had a couple scramble moments there. He's somewhat capable of doing that. But I think that the Browns' scheme, offensive line, skill group, and quarterback play will be the worst in the NFL this week.
So the Shedeur Sanders conversation is so difficult. Just maybe I just don't pay attention to college football enough in season to get the attraction to him in terms of just the devotion that the comments over and over and over are. And to me, it kind of just ruins the entire discourse watching him. We can say that right now he has issues, and those issues are going to be accentuated in this Cleveland Browns offense, right? Especially behind this offensive line. Dylan Gabriel, I don't think is good. And I've had that same energy ever since Dylan Gabriel's named a starter, that he's not going to be the starting quarterback of this team in 2026, as I have with Shedeur Sanders. But what Dylan Gabriel at least does is at times compensate for a bad offensive line because he hits his back foot and just rips it. Now, ripping it also means having a weak arm and then sailing out routes and those types of things. With Shedeur, when all these free rushers are going to be coming in his direction, because until he shows that he has an answer for pressure or understands where his hot routes are or being on the same page with those guys, he's going to have 5, 6 defenders blitzing on any given play. Okay. And he didn't show in the 2 quarters, albeit without starting reps and having a week of practice and all those things, that he's able to overcome that right now. But then in those moments, what we did see was exactly what we saw at Colorado, also behind an offensive line that was bad, is, hey, there's more space back than there is forward. And then the retreat just ends in negative plays because he doesn't have the athleticism to really overcome it, versus, oh, I know I'm going to get hit. I'm still going to step on my back foot and, fill the empty void of where the blitzer is coming from. So hopefully, and there's a possibility that against this putrid, no good, terrible Raiders defense, that there's going to be some success here. And I really do hope for that. But I am nervous, just like in totality, this Browns team is just beyond saving at this point. And it's kind of a really difficult situation for him to be in. And he's going to make it even more difficult for himself.
I'm curious what the blitz rate's going to be for the Raiders, because here are the numbers against the blitz. There was 9 dropbacks for Shedeur Sanders against the blitz. He did not complete a pass. He took 2 sacks. He had 1 scramble. And then when he did throw the ball, one of them was an interception, but 2 others were turnover-worthy plays. So he's had no answers against the blitz, and the Raiders or the Ravens figured that out immediately. Now we get a full week of Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham to throw a lot of blitz looks at him, and we'll see if he could handle it. But I think the big difference between Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur right now is Dylan Gabriel, like most of the time, stays within the pocket, where Shedeur is drifting into pressure, and you literally just like can't do that in the NFL. It's a non-starter. So hopefully he figures that out this week. I think it'll be a challenge.
They were also up on the scoreboard when he came in, 16-10, and they couldn't have extended drives and they couldn't create first downs with him at quarterback on top of it. Overall, until he proves that he knows what to do with hots and pressure looks, defenses will pressure him drive after drive after drive. So that's the number one thing I'm looking at in this Raiders. Like, even if he's inaccurate or they lose and they get blown out, at least in these pressure situations, does he know what he's doing? That's all I care about. All right. Let's talk about the Green Bay Packers here. I know he's coming off an injury, but it is notable to me that Matthew Golden now is wide receiver 4 in snaps behind both Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, and certainly Romeo Doubs, playing just 33% of snaps, because the figure of the pick, the hypothetical of the pick in fantasy football drafts this summer was, they spent a first-round pick on Matthew Golden because they've been doing this rotation year after year after year. That means he's going to be out there all the time. And again, understand the shoulder and he's missed weeks, but that is not the case here as we head into week 12.
Yeah, easily one of my biggest L's. I went back and looked at my final predictions tab, and I said my 2 favorite rookie picks was Emeka Egbuka, which has been good, and then Matthew Golden, and just has not been able to get enough of the manufactured touches, even without Jaden Reed, and then also just like not been somebody that they go to for first read targets. And early on the season, he had some opportunities to score long touchdowns, and not to his fault, but just missed on those. And ever since then, they have not been going to him. Christian Watson's also been playing good football. So like I understand why Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs would be playing on the perimeter. And then they like Dontavian Wicks in the slot more than they like putting Matthew Golden out there too. So big miss. It would be really nice. The Packers could definitely use somebody like Matthew Golden out there, but he's just not ready as I think a 21-year-old rookie right now. Yeah, it stinks.
At the same time, you could draft Emeka Egbuka and Matthew Golden in back-to-back rounds and still come out on
That's
top
a win
there.
That's a huge win. Huge win.
Yes. Also, we don't know anything at the time of this recording about Josh Jacobs. He left halfway through the game, and then it sounds like he wants to play through it, which, by the way, we've been in these spots before, and Josh Jacobs has played through it. But if he is out, Emmanuel Wilson is most likely a top 12 running back this week. I mean, there's a lot of good and talented ones up top, and I know they're playing the Minnesota Vikings, but they are 6.5-point favorites at home in that game, projected to score 23.5.
He's going to have the exact same role as Josh Jacobs, and maybe they pass the ball a little bit more, but it'd be very easy to copy paste a lot of the Josh Jacobs numbers. I watched it. He literally did just land on his knee. He didn't get hit on the side. There's no like MCL weirdness. Like, he has a knee contusion because he just like landed his kneecap right on the turf, which they said was harder than other turfs. So hopefully he can play through that. But the Jordan Love stuff, by the way, some of the plays that he was making, like this is where going back to the Cam Ward discussion, if you can just buy a little bit of extra time with that arm strength, that's where the magic happens, because it's hard to stay sticky on routes for that long. Cam Ward's not been able to break contain enough to get to where the Jordan Love could do it, but there were some absolutely incredible throws from Jordan Love based off of his arm talent. So super impressed with what he did in this game.
Final point here on the Packers. We've talked about their defense a lot this season. The first 2-3 weeks, it was one of the best. I mean, the linebackers were flying around, relentless pass rush. Justice Mosqueda pointed this out, that the Packers aren't getting anything pass rushing department from edge rushers other than Micah Parsons. And you would like to think that if you made that move for Micah Parsons, then it quote unquote frees everyone else up if he is getting double looks and, so much attention from everyone. He has a quick pressure rate of 20%. Rashawn Gary's at 5%, and Lucas Van Ness and Enigbari are even lower than that. So Rashawn Gary has somehow had a worse year next to Micah Parsons than he has had in other years without Micah Parsons.
I thought Mitchell Schwartz got my Schwartz down. Mitchell Schwartz made a good point, though, where if Micah Parsons is the guy that they move across the formation, you're not like really like freeing up looks. If Micah Parsons like rushing in the A gap and stuff, that's not really helping the edge on the outside. So just like kind of at the margins, it doesn't matter as much because Micah is moved around, rightfully so. But yeah, Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness are like freakazoid athletes. Their best should be getting home against the one-on-ones, and it's just not been there.
Moving on. Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. They're coming out of the bye week, Hayden. What do you want to see from this team in week 12?
The pumpkin of Daniel Jones, I think it's largely kind of overblown. He's been still so good. He's took more pressures to sacks and led some to some interceptions previously, but some of those were just like his tackles getting beat one-on-one against the Steelers, for example. So I think this offense is completely ready to go. I'm not really like looking to see anything about what's going to change here. I don't know what you would possibly change. It's a perfect formula all the way across. And I was looking at the points per drive metric, and they are by themselves right now. Like it's not a good offense. It's by far the best offense on a per drive basis. It's not even close. Then you get to the Lions and the Chiefs and the Bills and the rest of them.
It's just enjoyable to watch this team on a weekly basis. They're 8-2 at this moment. And if you look at their next few games, it's against some teams that though they're potentially face in the AFC playoffs or potentially in the Super Bowl, because they have the Chiefs, the Texans, the Jaguars, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Jaguars, and the Texans the rest of the way. So those are different styles of tests on both offense and defense. And we get 7 straight of them to end the season. That's exactly what we want to see about, either you're in or you're kind of out here on the Colts, or you can be skeptical, and that's totally fine. Also, I want to see Alec Pierce, man. I mean, on the season, wide receiver 37 in points per game does not do it justice to how good of a player he has been so far this year. And we know that prior to their bye, he was the wide receiver 22, then 35, then 16, and wide receiver 12. That's just in standard scoring. I'm sure it's different in half PPR. But yeah, I mean, some really difficult defenses and corner matchups that he is going to have to be a major part of, because he is the vertical plus weapon of that team.
Yeah, I think his big breakouts is more in breakers, out breakers, and he's just getting some of the targets that Michael Pittman used to get. So that's going to be fascinating. By the way, Colts playing the Chiefs this week are underdogs here. And like that's what goes back to the Chief conversation. It's so hard to rule them out because everyone knows, even with the Colts, as good as their season has been, they're still 3.5 dogs to the Chiefs here.
Jacksonville Jaguars. We're also waiting on the Bashal Tutin injury. I thought you and Jacob covered it well in terms of the waiver wire episode. Just for people that might have missed that, anything you want to add to that conversation here and how the backfield split looked this week?
Yeah, so it was pretty much a 50-50 split in terms of snaps. How they get to it, there's no like rhyme or reason to it. They both just have different styles. So Bashal Tutin's got a lot more pitches, but they would be playing at like kind of at random to me. So like both of them get goal line opportunities. Travis Etienne sprinkling in a couple of like wildcat carries at the goal line. I think that they're using it properly, where Bashal Tutin, he's such a good athlete that I do think giving him these pitches makes it a little bit easier for him to like get up to speed faster. So I like that. And then I just don't know about the ankle injury, if he's going to be ready to go or not here. And that's just what's going to complicate it. But I understood why they wanted to attack the Chargers in the way that they did. A lot of light boxes, get these two backs out in space. I do think that was a good way to handle the mismatch there.
And Parker Washington still played the most out of the group, but scored as the wide receiver 3. So while the process can be true of, he played the most snaps and Jacoby Myers played fewer, and we know Tim Patrick popped up there for a touchdown. Parker Washington's still on the field for this team. We'll see about Brian Thomas Jr. moving forward too. Los Angeles Chargers. My big fear about this Chargers team is every single week we are now going to ask ourselves, okay, is this opponent going to do what the Jacksonville Jaguars did of totally disrupt and destroy our decrepit offensive line? And if that's yes, then is the offense just going to be totally unsuccessful? Is that a fair statement to make?
It is. They're on bye week this week. They could absolutely use a breather here. I'm sure Justin Herbert's limping around, and then we'll see what Kamani Vidal's injury is and then where Omarion Hampton is. But even if they do get Hampton back, they're going to need him out in like space, like on some of the receptions, because there's just no way that you can run the ball behind this offensive line. So it's like Justin Herbert hero mode, and that's kind of it. And then sometimes it's just he's going to be sped up a little bit and the ball sprays on him just a tad bit. And like that's the difference of if you picked up a first down or not, because the level of difficulty on what he's being asked to do is just as high as any quarterback in the NFL. And he is a human being after all. So he's going to have some duds like what he had here.
To me, it shows just how much he's been carrying a unit that has been destroyed by injuries all season long.
Yeah.
Just look at the rest of their schedule. After the bye week, they do get the Las Vegas Raiders. They should put up points there, right? Then it's the Philadelphia Eagles, which getting healthier, getting better, that might be a no-go, no-fly zone. Then it's the Kansas City Chiefs, who, as we talked about, not overly impactful up front in terms of pass rushers, but they are extremely well coached, extremely physical. Then the Dallas Cowboys, who, have 2 defensive tackles, and the Houston Texans and the Denver Broncos after that in the final 2 weeks.
I didn't like that schedule that you just listed up. I was kind of shaking my head the whole, even like the Raiders, you're just like, what's Max Crosby going to do against freaking Deculus?
Right. So 4 of those 6 teams that they see the rest of the way have potentially a major defense and specifically defensive line advantage over this offensive line.
Yeah. And they still like rotate everybody, and like Gadsden is still going to be live versus Quentin Johnson, who's not going to get very many downfield shots. Keenan Allen had like the best game, but that was because they were in 11 personnel because they were chasing points. That's not always going to be the case. So yeah, I see it the same way. It's just like the reality sets in. No Pro Bowl left tackle, no points. Like that's just kind of how it goes across the league.
Yeah. With that said, the Athletics still gives them a 64% chance of making the playoffs. Obviously, if they lose the Raiders this week, that drops down to 41%, but we will see the rest of the way. Or
it's
next
Jacksonville.
Week,
it's largely what Jacksonville, the Chiefs, and the Chargers, 2 of the 3 make the playoffs, and the other one doesn't. Like that's oversimplifying, but that's largely true.
Yeah, because the Steelers are at 28%, the Texans are at 24%. But yeah, like you said, the Chiefs 56%, Chargers 64%, and then the Bills at 92%.
Yeah, Bills too.
And Jaguars at 63, if I didn't say that before. Next up, the Los Angeles Rams, the best team in the NFL. Albeit, the red zone touchdown success, as we talked about on Sunday, was the key here because there were actually multiple series where the offense really couldn't get anything going in comparison to what we've seen so far this year.
Yeah, I thought the defense was awesome. Some of the interceptions that they had was like kind of scheme related, and then also like a nice twist to create pressure for Sam Darnold, and just in general, Jared Verse and Young are just so relentless that you kind of felt Sam Darnold as things started to unravel, they really started to unravel. And I think that's a credit to what the Rams did defensively. It's a top 5 defense too. Like we're talking about the offense as number 2, number 3 in the league. Their defense is right there. So I think that was like the big statement is having the ability to like actually speed up Sam Darnold. Like not many defenses have been able to do that. And then like a roaming safety coming across the field for an interception. Like you don't see that from other defenses there. I think it was just a really well coached defensive game.
We say it every week. I'll repeat it one more time. We talk about all these other teams that have some major issues to their organization, to either their offense or their defense every single week. The Rams are the most complete team out there at this point.
Yeah. I don't even know what
even rushing the ball. It is more explosive. It is more efficient. It is more effective this year on 5, 10, 12 plus yard runs than it has been in previous seasons.
Even their punter is good.
Even their punter won them this game this past week. Miami Dolphins. We referred to it earlier, but Mike McDaniel set back analytics 5 years with that decision because when you just flat out go for it on 4th down in that area of the field, I think everyone just assumes that, analytics told you to go for it. No, Mike McDaniel actually went against what the formulas and the models say in that moment. But anyways, this is Tua against bad and average teams. They can put up points. And guess what? Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane get 90-something% of that.
The Achane numbers are just spectacular.
So good.
Like so the whole season it's been Jonathan Taylor and CMC by themselves. And then I would say like A-Chain's been like kind of by himself next, and him like Josh Jacobs have been kind of battling things out. And then Gibbs and Bijan, those guys have like spike weeks, but I mean, A-Chain like has not missed. He missed the one game in Cleveland with weather, and we called that before. And then every other game has just been completely automatic. So
he has not scored worse than running back 16 in any week this season. Again, he's the running back 3 ahead of Gibbs, Jacobs, Bijan. This is exactly what we want. His receptions are basically edge runs. We know he can catch them down the field. And I think most of all, we saw it against the Buffalo Bills on top of it here against the Commanders. He is also winning some on contact once getting to the second and third levels too, and creating yards on his own. So what a fun player he is across the league.
I think the coach has already saved his job just with like the cool wins recently and just staying in some games that they had no business staying in. I think that he's already safe for next year. I think the bigger question will be who's the quarterback, who's the general manager, those type of things.
Minnesota Vikings projected for 17 points this week on the road in Lambeau Field. On offense with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, projected for just 17 points in a big-time divisional matchup. Why do you think that is, Hayden?
I do wonder what it is. Some numbers, though. Kevin O'Connell last week had like the lowest neutral pass rate since week 1. I think there's reasons for that. He's just seeing what's happened. They're just like really like it's very plain what's happened here. He's not ready. Like he's late on things and his feet are all over the place, and that explains the inaccuracies. So that stuff does not get fixed overnight. We talk about quarterback experience all the time. I think it's going to take a long time from JJ McCarthy to get there. And then it just comes down to how long could Kevin O'Connell look to his veterans? Like all the money that they spent on this offseason instead of going to Sam Darnold went to veteran players. You have Justin Jefferson, super highly paid, and he's not having a good time out there. How long could you say we have to develop this guy before it's too much? So
we said this past week against a down bad Bears defense that if Justin Jefferson didn't get there and, the rest of their schedule is also part of this, then we're going to have some conversations. He has now dropped from wide receiver 16 in points per game down to wide receiver 18 in points per game. So again, there are some games left on the schedule for this to get right. And that is the most important aspect of it, to get right the rest of the way. It's not this week and it's not next week against Seattle. Then they have, again, Washington, Dallas, the Giants in 3 straight contests. But these next 2 weeks could be very, very bad for the discourse. And then we're going to find ourselves in week 14.
Yeah, I think Kevin O'Connell is going to do the old Bill Ackman, may I meet you, with a bunch of prospects and quarterbacks on the market and see who he can bring over. Because it's to the point where there's at least going to be competition for the next year. I think they know what's up.
New England Patriots are up next for our conversation. We won't go and rehash the Trevin Henderson conversation. I do just want to bring up 88% of snaps and 24 touches. I am not sure what it looks like when and if Ramondre Stevenson returns. I would just continue to say that Trevin Henderson's stuff rate is better than Ramondre Stevenson's. If you want to look at yards per carry, they're both in the 3.5-ish range. One guy gives you explosives, one guy doesn't. I think the most notable, actually, Hayden, depth chart change here is versus what we've seen the past couple of years. Pop Douglas is now down to just 38% of snaps, whereas Kyle Williams played 80% of dropbacks. He had 3 targets, did not have a catch, but maybe even they are leaning now into these rookies in the back half of year 1.
Yeah, they get Mac Hollins out there, Steph Diggs. It's a big rotation. Then they go to 2 tight end sets on occasion. So yeah, it's a funky offense and how they use guys. That was going to be my question to you. I just posted the passing EPA chart that I always post every single week, and up and to the right, all the way to the top, is the Patriots this week. They're projected for 1 million points. It's a perfect matchup. The question is, aside from Steph Diggs, who I feel very comfortable, we're just going to rank him highly. He's been very good this year. Is there somebody else we can rank into the playable territory among the skill guys, tight ends? Is it Mac Hollins? Is it Kyle Williams? Is it Kayshon Boutte when he comes back? Because they're projected for so many points, and the passing has been so damn good, and the matchup's so clean that I want to pick somebody else here, but it's kind of hard to find who that is going to be.
It doesn't sound like much, but Mac Hollins has been the wide receiver 34 in points per game over the last 4 contests.
Yeah.
That has been 12.4, then 1.9, than 13.6 and 8.4 fantasy points. You can do worse.
Yeah. I'm hoping it's just Kayshawn's back and it's like, boom, I'm putting Kayshawn as my wide receiver 36 and we'll flip coins if he's going to score another one of these deep touchdown passes. I've been flashing this chart kind of throughout the episode. Look at the deep target completion percentage over expected. These are 20 plus yard throws. It's Dak Prescott, Sam Darnold, Drake May all by themselves, just automatic.
Question for you. Stephon Diggs' age included in this. Do you think based on what we've seen this year and the success they've already had, do you think Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel and the entire staff is going to sit back this offseason and say, well, Drake can do it with these types of talents, so there's no need to add someone to it? Or do you believe that, oh, Drake is so good at this, just imagine what it could be like if we get him a round 1, round 2 wide receiver?
Well, I think Kayshawn and Kyle Williams are under contract for the next season as well with Steph Diggs. So I'm going to guess they're going to say guard, center, guard, please. And I know they just drafted a couple guys, but I think the center position will be up there. And then the right tackle is very old. So maybe like that's another angle that they go with. I do think they can kind of get away with Drake May with Diggs and Kyle Williams and Kayshawn. I mean, Kayshawn's been really good. And then Kyle Williams is a developmental guy, but he's also one of the fastest ball carriers in the NFL and limited touches too. So yeah, I would guess that they're going to go like, we need like another like linebacker type, another safety type, and then the interior offensive line is, I'm guessing, what they're going to do, but who knows?
It's always an interesting question for me because, just observing these organizations for so long, either some teams do make a strength even stronger, which it would be investing in a wide receiver like that, or they do believe that the quarterback can just mask that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, also, if we've been tracking Josh McDaniels for so long, at some point he will not want Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry as his top 2 tight ends. Yep. And they might invest in a tight end that can also help with the run blocking element of all this stuff too. So maybe it's one of these tight ends that they invest in the first and second round pick.
I can totally see that. That makes a ton of sense. Those guys are long in the tooth at this point. So that would be really exciting.
Okay, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. They are coming out of the bye week. The last time we saw them, we remember Tyler Shuck making plays versus pressure, magically forcing defensive backs to fall down on the field. What do you want to see from the Saints team the rest of the way?
Yeah, I mean, just if the downfield stuff could have any stickiness to it. I know you can make those throws. It's just doing it under pressure. Again, he was able to do that the last game, but we're talking about, I mean, offensive line play for New Orleans is as bad as it gets aside from left tackle at this point with a bunch of injuries and trades and whatnot. So he's got his work cut out, but I was pretty dang impressed with what he did. That was a lot of those throws were very difficult throws, and some of it was out of structure after like shedding some sacks. So if you can do that in the NFL, he's got enough arm talent. It was never to me about the arm talent with him. It was about the first 2.5 seconds and making sure you're not going to go into full panic mode right after that. So,
and they're favored this week. They're favored by 1.5 points against the Atlanta Falcons, who they're hosting at home. I get it too.
I get it.
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons pass rushers are much different than like the Panthers pass rushers, for example. So it's going to be faster guys coming off the edge versus Panther stuff was a lot more up the middle in your face. But that's exactly, the question I had about Tyler Shuck, because there are so many of those bad moments of him escaping out the sides and stuff. This time, a lot of it was up the middle, climbing and then releasing it. And so, I still think the Saints are going to be looking in the quarterback market, but there's plenty of time, 7 games plus, of Tyler Shuck being able to prove that distinction wrong. And if the Saints win a couple of those, they're not going to be in the position that these other teams are too.
Yeah, I'm curious about the Saints. I think they have 2 quarterbacks that are at least intriguing enough where...
But I think like the Rattler stuff is done after you bench him after this, Yeah.
Rattler to Minnesota would be pretty interesting.
There's going to be a fascinating, I don't even know what tier I would call it, with a traits tier rotation and musical chairs. Yep. Rattler, Anthony Richardson on top of that too. And then there's going to be some hungry teams out there that miss out on the one dude that they like in the draft this year.
The quarterback 2 market, like all the guys have been kind of flashing as maybe you can get away with as a starter for the next season, are all under contract. Yeah. Mac Jones, Jacoby, Spencer Rattler, Tanner McKee. There's a bunch of guys. So I'm curious if any of these teams are gonna be like, you know what? Yeah, we'll take a third. Why not?
New York Giants, Cam Scatterbo, on Monday Night Raw. I don't know if you went back and watched this game at all. Again, I just want to highlight that Tyrone Tracy looked very good and very efficient. It did not matter when it came to fantasy football in comparison to Devin Singletary, because once again, touchdowns matter a lot. Overall, maybe Jackson Dart returns in this game, but they are currently 10.5-point underdogs on the road here against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, the running back spot's the big one here. Both guys had actually season high in usage because Tyrone Tracy is so featured between the 20s, but Devin Singletary has every single touch since the Scatterbo injury inside the 10-yard line. And I think there's reasons for that. I think that the big weakness for Tyrone Tracy is just like, I think physicality on contact up the middle. And Devin Singletary is marginally better at that. And you're not going to make Tyrone Tracy the bell cow. So that's how they're going to deploy Devin Singletary. So yeah, right now, like they need Darius Slayton back. As crazy as it sounds, like Isaiah Hodgins and Jalen Hyatt can't be the answers on the perimeter right now. And that's what it was. I mean, 4 days ago, Isaiah Hodgins was a free agent. They signed him, and he was easily the top guy in the pass game.
I do feel like every time he pops up, though, he makes some grabs with a defender on his back all the time.
Yeah. It is wild. It is wild. So, but it's also not good enough, you know?
It is not. And it's not going to be good enough the rest of the way. And speaking of, the New York Jets are the next team, and they're projected for just 15.5 points this week. They're also on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. Tyrod Taylor most likely is the starting quarterback. I don't think we've gotten that confirmation from Aaron Glenn, but we have gotten that confirmation from Diana Rusi.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Glenn's right before kickoff, so I'm not going to tell anybody. But, I mean, you can't go back to Justin Fields after what he's been doing. Now, Tyrod Taylor, the only reason why he's out there is so they can evaluate the rest of their guys, which is like kind of Mason Taylor. Like, I don't even know who else are they even evaluating on offense right now? You know what you have in Breece Hall? Like, it's just to evaluate Mason Taylor, I guess. I don't know. Where should I rank Mason Taylor this week? Just blindly.
My thing is, where are you going to rank Breece Hall? Because on top of it, if Tyrod's the starting quarterback, when we're looking at second halves of these games, they'll drop back more often. You know, they're going against a Ravens defense. He's been running back 18 in points per game all season. Is he going to be inside your top 20 this week at running back?
Yeah, I think he still has to be, but it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be more boom busty, but even if they drop back more, like that's where Breece Hall was promised all those receptions this year. Maybe now we start getting some more of them. He had that 42-yarder screen touchdown the other week, but
I do worry that if they're in catch up 4-minute, 2-minute drills, that is, Isaiah Davis on top of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's not going to be pretty, but I think he still is the entire offense right now. And no Garrett Wilson. I don't even have a wide receiver listed. I have a cutoff is at 4 expected points over the last month on average, and not a single wide receiver pops up for the Jets.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers has a fractured left wrist, reportedly does not need surgery, and he's also pushing to play this week. They're targeting a Friday practice for him to see if he is going to play this week. That would be against the Chicago Bears defense. They're still projected for 21, so I'm assuming the Bucs think that Aaron Rodgers will play.
Yeah, I have no idea. But this offense is just like so frustrating to me. Like they put up like better numbers than you would think, but it's just kind of sporadic in how they get there. I mean, the Darnell Washington stuff was unbelievable. With Jalen Warren, I don't know what to say about that because I don't know if he's going to play or not. Did want to note that Kenny Gainwell was playing more before Jalen Warren's injury, and then after Jalen Warren's injury, Caleb was actually playing more than when we saw Kenny Gainwell go crazy overseas too.
None of that makes sense to me because, we got the game where Jalen Warren missed. It was across the pond, and Kenny Gainwell filled in admirably. And I thought because he did that, then Arthur Smith would play him more once Jalen Warren returned. They did for that first game, and then the next 2/3. It was all Jalen Warren. And now out of nowhere, Kenny Gainwell is going to get a bunch of first half opportunities. Again, no rhyme or reason. And for us who have the impossible task of trying to predict the future, that makes no sense. There's no repetition there.
Who knows? I don't have a clean answer to you. I think if Jalen Warren does miss here, I do think this is like a good time to get Caleb like just a bunch of carries, I'd still rank Kenny Gainwell far ahead of Caleb, but I don't think that Caleb should have 4 touches the next game if Jalen Warren is out. I think that it should be more 65-35 Otherwise, like the whole rookie season is completely wasted. So it already is trending towards that, but like get some reps that you can kind of build off in the offseason.
He has to put something on tape for him to not be kind of one of these wasted third round picks.
Yeah.
Because who knows what's going into next year? Jalen Warren's under contract. They have all these guys. But a third round pick isn't going to prevent you from taking a second rounder that you like a lot the next season.
Yeah. So I think it won't be the exact same workload as it was before.
Okay, next, let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers, because the report of a, quote, full go ahead of Brock Purdy's week 11, it was clearly a full go during the game. I mean, there was so much movement, I felt, that, him climbing the pocket, escaping it, getting him out in these rollouts. He looked so much healthier than that one return game that he did have a couple weeks ago. And this offense, so sweet. I mean, how they isolated George Kittle versus a starting linebacker.
The whole game.
Great. Yeah. And it was also a great check by Purdy to get into that. Like they push Kyle Juszczyk out wide. He holds that corner down. They got single high, and then George Kittle just attacked that void, that space, versus the holding safety that Brock Purdy was keeping to the middle of the field. I mean, yeah, this is exactly what I'd hoped to see from the start of the season from the 49ers. It still was quality stuff, winning football in many cases with Mac Jones. But I understand that maybe some 49ers players are going to be some low advance rate stuff into the best ball playoffs. But if you get them there, based on how this team looks right now, then you have some, I think, real wild cards to score points above many of your opponent's players.
Yeah, so kind of hit these guys like a little bit one by one. Brock Purdy I thought his movement was much better, like you said. It, to me, wasn't fully there either. I thought some of the throws kind of lingered a little bit more than I was kind of used to, but it didn't matter in this game. There's dudes wide open the entire contest. And George Kittle, like you said, was just completely highlighted against the linebackers and safety. And that dude is absolutely moving out there. So super promising stuff for Kittle. With Ricky Pearsall, just because he had like largely a dud here, the reality is with him, and Shanahan said it, he is their like number one receiver, which doesn't always mean like number one in fantasy points. He's running a lot of clear out routes for big outbreakers kind of behind him, or just like big kind of post routes, big deep routes, dig routes. And it's just harder to get the football that way. And when you have Kittle in CMC to kind of throw underneath, he's just not going to get enough volume. Now, he is still very valuable to the 49ers, and he will have big games because they can rip the ball down the field, and Ricky Pearsall can absolutely move out there. But he's going to be, I think, more inconsistent, kind of how like Ayuk was in previous seasons, where he's clearly talented, but there's so many other guys to get the ball to, and he's running the most difficult routes in the offense.
But most of all, he played a ton in his return to the field off of a long-term injury.
And I thought it looked fine too.
I agree. On the point that you made about the ball lingering, he ended up with no interceptions, but there were some real risky plays from Brock Purdy, like the rollout, an extended lob up, another one with the safety dropping off of George Kittle into the in breaker behind him. Both of those were turnover-worthy plays. I felt, again, Monday Night Football this week at home. They are currently 7-point favorites over the Panthers, projected total of 28. If the Panthers don't get Trevin Wallace back with his shoulder injury, he was calling the defense, and that kind of unlocked the defense when he started doing that. Christian Roseboom also is questionable for this game with an injury. That would be two backup linebackers on a team that already starting linebackers were their weakness. And Kyle Shanahan just dominates the middle of the field. I understand, like, playing more dime and nickel. Guess what? If you do that, there's just going to be a bunch of Christian McCaffrey up the middle of the field too. So,
it should be a crazy game. Crazy game for Kittle again.
Yes.
Again.
Seattle Seahawks. Reeves had an incredible stat earlier the week that I'll read out to you that I'm sure producer Reeves will put on the screen as well. The Seahawks were 0-4 on 3rd and long, 7+ yard situations back in week 11. They are a league worst 7 for 57 on 3rd and 7+ situations this year. The league average is 25%. They're at 12.3%. The Seahawks are very good overall, and they're especially good on offense when staying on schedule. But to me, in the moments that they haven't been tested on as frequently as they were against the Rams in those 3rd and 7+ situations, we don't have an overall positive answer for them yet. There is and will be times for them to prove that it can be a positive answer. I think they have the talent and ability to do it. But as of now, it's kind of, I'm not going to say a small sample, but not a great sample for them
Yeah.
right now, despite them being one of the best teams in the league at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it, I guess, like in an extreme version with the Saints last year, where when your under center play action stuff is ripping, it's awesome. But then once you either don't have the defense or you're a negative script, then you have to win like more traditional drop back stuff. And that's where Sam Darnold has been still more hit and miss, especially when he feels pressure, then he like doubles down with it. And he was just way too aggressive on some of the decisions and a little bit panicky. So yeah, I'm not expecting them to be chasing by many points very often because that defense is so damn good. But yeah, that has been like the weakness of the team right now is running the ball consistently. And then in the standard drop back game, it just hasn't been quite as good. You also don't have to have that to win the Super Bowl if you just get the right game script and your defense goes crazy. And I still think they can get better at it too. It's still a first time play caller with quarterback, a lot of young guys up front. So hopefully they can kind of figure it out and maybe get like Rashid Shaheed more involved there. Cause I think that he would be a better answer in some like third and long distance stuff versus like where Cooper Kupp has been for large parts of the season.
They have some layups on the rest of their roster or schedule, I should say, too, in the Titans and the Falcons in 2 of the next 3 games. But they also face some good defenses overall. The Vikings and the Rams specifically again. And then they have a couple of other teams mixed in there in terms of the Colts. Yeah, I mean, this team, again, is one of the best in the league. And Hayden, is my memory too short? But it feels like this season, more so than the usual year of the last 5, the best defenses are going to keep their offenses in games and give them a legit chance to win the Super Bowl. I can count 4 that are top tier units that are true difference makers out there versus previous ones that, you know, there are stretches of the season, but it feels like from start to finish this year, there have been 4 units out there that have been incredible.
Yeah, I thought the Eagles definitely had the best defense last year, like as the season progressed. And I think, like you said, there's 4 or 5 of them. And Seahawks absolutely have one. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, like Sam Darnold, the seeing ghost things, panicking under pressure, like bad luck, always just going to be in the back of your mind. At the same time, you just held the Rams to like nothing, despite all the field advantages that they had off the interceptions
and red zone issues and all that stuff. Because the red zone, they were 6th in red zone touchdown rate heading into this game, and then they just couldn't convert against the Rams defense.
Yep. Yeah. So I would still feel pretty solid if I was a Seahawks fan after that one. I mean, the defense showed up in about as good as you possibly could have imagined.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Anything you want to add about Sean Tucker taking over this backfield in the second half? When I watched it, 2 of his TD runs were practically the exact same play, albeit out of different personnel groupings. You pull a mammoth freak athlete in front of you in Tristan Wirfs. The first one, he depletes a safety and deletes him from the field. The other one, he didn't even have to touch anyone. He beat Sean Tucker to the end zone, you know? Again, one was out of 11 personnel. The other one was out of 12 personnel. So those edge and outside runs were pretty sweet.
Yeah. I mean, the Tristan Wirfs stuff, like how many human beings at that size are faster than he? I mean, it doesn't even make sense watching him. Yeah, I thought they used Sean Tucker to get some explosives, and the big reception that he had down the field was another good design from him. Jacob and I talked about this one for a very long time in the waiver wire show. Go back and watch that. We just still don't know about the Bucky Irving part of this, but I do think Sean Tucker is going to lead the team in carries ahead of Rashad White if Bucky Irving misses. And then I think that Sean Tucker is going to play more than he did previously once Bucky Irving comes back. And it's a huge question mark right now because we don't even know if Bucky Irving could take a hit. I'm not sure if the Buccaneers know that.
It's one of those where I want Bucky Irving to play, but until Todd Bowles comes out and says he is playing this week, I kind of can't factor him in this equation at all. That's an obvious statement, but I also wonder at the same time if, you know, he goes back to the 70% snap rate that he had in the opening 3-4 games of the season, which was a huge difference versus the 55% that he had last year, which he did a great job on it. But that's just a majorly different dynamic of us entering games for a 70% running back versus a 50-ish percent running back.
Yep. Full agree. And also Liam Cohen was so sensational last year, and we're just not getting the same level of Baker Mayfield recently too. So
I also think they feel it. I mean, Mecca's been awesome, but basically not having a spectacular second wide receiver on the field, you do feel like no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. Tez is filling in incredibly admirably. I mean, done such a good job of breaking the mold, late round pick at his size, stepping in here. That doesn't happen often, but you do feel it not having Mike Evans out there.
Yeah, he's a fun third option, but you could scheme around Emeka at this point defensively.
That is also a very fun Sunday night football game. It's Bucks at Rams. Bucks only projected for 21.5.
Baker Mayfield revenge game, or what are we calling that? Kind of
no.
That's revitalized.
Yes,
yeah,
that's a Baker Mayfield. You revitalized my career. If I didn't have that game out of a 2-day window of being on your roster, I might not be here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the starting quarterback.
Like that was just like a legendary game. Like that's like a just don't forget about it if you're an NFL sicko like us.
I hope someone out there has a Baker Mayfield Rams jersey.
That's so awesome. Yeah, that's good.
You wear number 18? Is that correct? Anyways,
yeah,
we'll close things out with the Washington Commanders here. I honestly have nothing to add.
No,
I hate to say that. What are they going into a bye, if I'm not mistaken? This team is just so different than the one we were hoping to watch on a weekly basis. The only one that is relevant to us in this moment is Deebo Samuel. If he had a stable environment to work in all season long, I truly believe that Deebo Samuel could have potentially hit top 15 wide receiver numbers all season long. Unfortunately, he's down to, this isn't bad, wide receiver 18 in points per game, tied with Justin Jefferson at this moment.
I think in the games without Terry McLaurin with Marcus Mariota, he's still gonna be fine. Like he still had a good game. That was still a very good matchup. So I'm still feel decent about Deebo Samuel. But once Terry McLaurin gets back, that'll make it a little bit more challenging. And then the backfield, it was more Chris Rodriguez, and then Bill gets some touches, but it's a total nightmare, and they're going to be really bad in projected points. And their defense has really like no chance. So yeah, I think this is just a little bit of Zach Ertz, a little bit of Marcus Mariota in deep leagues, and then feel good about Deebo only for everybody else.
I've seen some skepticism and some concerns from people that they believe that Bill Krosky-Merritt was a fantasy football injury plant, not injury plant, a
industry
fantasy football industry plant.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
I mean, it worked. That was the marketing behind it was definitely very, very good. But
I mean, he was getting like sideline interviews ahead of games previously.
Oh,
I actually think Bill's quite talented.
Yeah.
Again, they're using Chris Rodriguez by far and away the most here. And we know Jared McNichols has his role. And then if you're not in the red zone for a team that's not going to score a bunch of points, then Bill's just not going to get an opportunity. I will probably have some Bill propaganda though this summer. Just
interesting. I just think the hard part, and let me see if I included it in here, is I didn't, but I'll post it to Twitter. The team running back touches, like expected touchdown, you just don't get them in this offense. It's just the way that it's structured. And until that changes, and it's going to be a committee with Cliff Kingsbury, like there's no fantasy value in this backfield.
It's 7th round Brian Robinson Jr., albeit I think that B-Rob maybe runs with a bit more power and is more straight line. And Bill, I still believe aesthetically has some very cool lateral wiggle to his game.
Yeah. I like the B-Rob touches in San Francisco this year. It's been pretty good.
All right. That is going to do it. We went through all 32 teams. I hope. Cross your fingers. As always, go and support Underdog. Promo code the show. Description down below. If you're in Georgia, California, Texas, Florida, Oregon, South Carolina, Virginia, all these places, prediction markets, we're in your state, sides, totals, everything, along with, pick 'em, drafts. We've got it all. $5 played the first time. We'll give you $100 in bonus cash. For Weaves and Mosho and Hayden, up the villa. We'll talk to y'all soon. See ya.